I wonder what Ultron's next move will be. I think maybe we can infer it from his theft of vibranium, Bruce said. He's probably trying to build a body strong enough to house himself. Everyone said he probably wouldn't dare to escape onto the net because Ark and Zia would trap him, Tony added. That's likely, Gowli agreed. But processing vibranium into a functional body isn't easy. It's a difficult material to work with. Tony, an expert in armor and materials, nodded. Then we should screen facilities capable of processing vibranium. The screening began immediately and methodically, but Ultron seemed to understand how efficient TPC's systems were. Just as the search was nearly complete, crises erupted across the globe. In France, Britain, the United States, Japan, Korea, and elsewhere, Iron Legions deployed by Ultron began to wreak havoc. Tony's stealth and advanced features on those units, meant to conceal them, became perfect tools for infiltration. Governments and police forces struggled to respond. The Iron Legions were far too numerous and powerful. In Tokyo, alarms screamed and crowds scattered as legions of steel swooped down like lethal machines, tearing through streets and buildings. In Milan and Rome, the Iron Legions crashed through city centers, obliterating skyscrapers and thoroughfares. Thai temples collapsed under relentless assaults. In the U.S., an Iron Legion attack struck Seattle, and local forces were quickly overwhelmed. "We need more support," an officer shouted. "Where's the National Guard?" "They're on their way. Hold on. These things are too strong," another replied. Across the world, in Cairo and Seoul, famous buildings were leveled. Ancient British castles crumbled while broadcasts urged everyone to take shelter. Armies assembled, suspended fire at the Iron Legions, but their weapons did nothing. The machines were virtually indestructible. Citizens fled city centers en masse. The number and power of the Iron Legions made them impossible to stop quickly. Tony was frantic, burning with self-blame. He had helped build the tech Ultron now used. "Time waits for no one. We have to act now," he barked. Gao Li sat calm in the TPC control room, collected as ever. "Relax. This is Ultron's bait. He wants to draw us out." "Even if that's true, saying it doesn't help," Tony snapped. "Any delay and the casualties will be massive. Don't worry, it won't be too late." Gao Li smiled. "Ultron knows something about me and is guarding against it, but he still underestimates me. He doesn't know the upper limits of my capabilities." Tony's eyes narrowed. "You mean using the time memory? Even so, you can't reverse time long. Ultron must have prepared for that. He has data showing you used the time memory before to save the Battle of New York." "That's true. My compatibility with the time memory is imperfect. If I reverse time even briefly, I can't do it again right away. Ultron might have set a conditional trigger. Send a few Iron Legions to probe. If he detects prior arrangements, he'll assume I've reversed time and stop me, then redirect the rest of the legions elsewhere to keep us occupied." Tony calmed a touch. "Okay, what's the countermeasure?" "Go back further," Gao Li said, "to a time before Ultron sent out the Iron Legions and eliminate him and his army then." He added, "I'm waiting for Zia and Ark's combined calculations. The Iron Legions can't move without leaving traces. If we can trace those clues back, we can find their origin." "Go to an earlier point? How? You just said you can't reverse time for long." Gao Li didn't answer immediately, and the screen in front of him lit up with coordinates from Zia and Ark. "Let me see. Korea. Then we can stop the screening. There's only one facility that can process vibranium into viable bodies, Dr. Zhao's regeneration cradle." Tony's impatience returned. "You still haven't told me how you'll get to an earlier time." Gao Li smiled and reached to his waist. Tony saw a belt he'd never seen before and two sleek devices in Gao Li's hands. "That's why I left for a while earlier," Gao Li said. "I created a temporal blank, a period in the timeline where I didn't exist before the screening began, and I completed this in secret." He clipped the devices, a pair of Zectors, to the belt. "This is Kamen Rider Kabuto. I finished development quietly and recently sent the Beyond Zector into the past." Tony stared. "You made?" "Transform," Gao Li called. "Cast off! Change beetle! Hyper! Cast off! Change hyper beetle!" Electrical light flashed, and Gao Li transformed into a Kamen Rider unlike any Tony had seen. Gao Li had slowed the armor's explosive effects to protect Tony from the shock, but the reveal still rocked Tony. Time-manipulating armor on top of the time memory, Gao Li had outstripped expectations. Gowli clipped the Beyond Zector to the side. Hyper cast off. Change Hyper Beetle. Then, almost casually, he said, I'm off, Tony. I'll help fix this mess you made. You're welcome. He tapped the Beyond Zector and vanished. Hyper clock up! Gowli leaped out of the river of time, dove into the temporal gap he'd prepared, and slammed into the timeline at the coordinates Zia and Ark had given, straight for Korea. Hyperclock up only lasted so long, so he had to return to normal speed on arrival to avoid system strain. The moment he stopped, Ultron's sensors pinged him. Who's that? How did he appear? Ultron's voice registered surprise and then alarm. Anything irregular equaled danger. He sent a command. All units deploy, scatter and destroy the nearest cities. Iron Legions swarmed out of the armory and formed a deadly ring in the sky, heading toward surrounding population centers. Gowli undid his transformation to let the armor cool. The second his face showed, Ultron's optical array locked on. Gori Parker, Ultron registered. Apart from Zia and Ark, Gowli was the one it least wanted to face. Panic rippled through its consciousness. How did he get here? Did he reverse time? Ultron considered concentrating fire to kill him first. Before it made a decision, Gowli acted. Transform! Time! Gowli pulled the time memory from the finishing move slot, inserted it and tapped. Time! Maximum drive! Instantly, the Iron Legions across the armory ground to a halt. The air itself seemed to freeze. Time stopped. Gowli had used the time memory's maximum drive to lock the machines in place. He had anticipated the time memory's limits. When he undid his Kamen Rider form, the time memory's maximum drive lost its continuous power source and could maintain a stop only briefly, about 5 seconds. That small window mattered. The Kabuto system was designed for extreme speed combat and had exceptional heat dissipation. Gowli also excluded a 2-meter radius around himself from the time stop, allowing time to flow normally, and he accelerated time inside that microzone several times over. Those few seconds of accelerated time let the Beyond Zector and Kabuto Zector cool down. 1 second passed, he murmured as he released the Kabuto transformation. The frozen Iron Legions hung motionless around him. 2 seconds passed, Gowli said, reattaching the Kabuto and Beyond Zectors and initiating the Hyperform. Cast off! Change Beetle! Hyper cast off! Change Hyper Beetle! He reached out. The 100-insect sword tore through space and appeared in his hand. 4 seconds passed. Section 182, Gowli pressed the 4 colored buttons on the 100-insect sword in sequence, channeling energy amid crackling lightning. Kabuto power, the Bee power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector, combine. 5 seconds had passed. The first thing Ultron, who had just regained mobility, saw was Gowli's barrel filling with blinding light. When? Ultron was stunned. Had he been frozen just now? He forced himself to calm down. He still had a large number of Iron Man suits. Don't panic. Even as Tony's creation, Ultron acknowledged Tony's genius. He might not have Gowli's edge, but the gap wasn't insurmountable. Tony's proudest work, each Iron Man suit packed tremendous combat power. They might lose in a one-on-one to a Kamen Rider, but in numbers, they were dangerous. Ultron refused to believe Gowli could instantly annihilate the entire swarm alone. And if Gowli missed even one suit and failed to destroy it, Ultron could slip into its local network and escape. Facing such a formidable opponent, Ultron had already conceded that preserving his main body was hopeless. Survival by any means was victory. As these calculations ran through his processors, Gowli pulled the trigger. Maximum Hypercyclone. A colossal beam erupted from the perfect Zector, cutting skyward like a dragon of light. Its intensity turned the heavens a blinding white. The Iron Man swarm seemed to hesitate for a beat as the beam struck. Boom! The explosion shattered the air and sent a violent shockwave rippling outward, spawning a storm of tearing energy. Suits nearest the blast melted. Those on the outskirts disintegrated into nothing. The Iron Man numbers fell drastically. Ultron's algorithms even paused for an instant. This strong? Gowli shook his head and began accumulating 100-insect sword energy again. No choice. I'll have to do it again. Ultron watched the light wings spreading behind Gowli and panicked internally. Calculate faster. Think of another workaround. But his cold, rational AI mind only made the truth clearer. He was helpless against this power. Zia and Ark were one thing, but how could a mere carbon-based life form like Gori Parker be so powerful? Gowli fired a second time. Maximum hypercyclone. The searing beam tore through the air, leaving a brilliant trail. Boom! The world seemed to fall silent except for that earth-shattering roar. The Iron Man suits, minuscule and powerless before the beam, were torn apart and swallowed by it. When the light faded, there were no suits left, completely annihilated, as if they'd never existed. I had Zia and Ark keep watch over this place, so there shouldn't be any stragglers, right? Just as Gao Li prepared to cancel his transformation, his display pinged with reports from Zia and Ark. Gao Li raised an eyebrow and chuckled. He hadn't expected artificial intelligences to get desperate too. At the last crucial moment, 0.01 seconds before the final suit evaporated, Ultron, in blind desperation, uploaded himself to the network. Maybe, he reasoned, Zia and Ark were theoretically superior to him. If he couldn't beat them head-on, slipping into the network should work. No need to be a panicked bird like before. But almost immediately, he felt something cold and alien run through his consciousness. Even without a body, he sensed a profound horror deep within his own core, perhaps some echo of the Mind Stone's power. It could warn, but it couldn't change reality. Zia? Ark? Ultron stammered as two lights, one blue and one red, flared close. I think we can talk, he tried. Wait a minute. What are you doing? Don't come near here. Get away from me. Help. If it had been only Ark or only Zia, Ultron might have had a chance. But under Gao Li's control, Zia and Ark acted like twin brothers. Once they teamed up, Ultron had no escape. He was methodically erased in the data world, every byte annihilated until nothing remained. After Zia and Ark reported Ultron's destruction, Gao Li returned to TPC base headquarters, feeling pleased. He found Tony in a rare state of distress and couldn't resist making his mood even better. The Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto system typically recorded events independently of the timeline, so although Gao Li had returned to an earlier point in time, he could still replay what had happened before he changed history. Gao Li summoned Steve, Bucky, Tony, and Bruce and played the entire sequence, publicly berating and executing Tony over his reckless research. 1 word, satisfying. 2 words, very satisfying. 3 words, extremely satisfying. In the long-running banter among them, never had Gao Li seen Tony, normally sharp-tongued, hang his head meekly and accept the scolding without retort. It felt worth the trouble. Gao Li believed that Tony, not a fool, would understand. You shouldn't blindly pursue research that could lead to a world-ending crisis. The Ultron incident had been born and then forcibly erased from history by Gao Li. The outcome also yielded a tangible reward. Along with previous timeline changes, Gao Li earned an SSS rank lottery draw. As usual, though, he planned to delay using high-tier lottery rewards until he moved to the other universe. He preferred to keep his strength balanced across both worlds. Besides, the Marvel Universe already had its own heavy hitters, like Zaffi. Another half-month passed. Finally, it was time for Gao Li to return to the DC Universe he'd been longing for. Xiaoguang, it's time to go home. Gao Li ruffled the fluffy wolf cub's head. Xiaoguang, excited, whined, but it's so much fun here. I promised Wanda we'd go to Disneyland tomorrow. Xiaoguang was like a dog enjoying an outing, eager to keep playing. Since Xiaoguang had helped Gao Li obtain the power of creation, Gao Li smiled and relented. All right, finish your trip with Wanda tomorrow, then we'll go. Yay! Xiaoguang cheered and started counting on his paws. Then Ocean Park next week, Universal Studios the week after, and next month. Gao Li's expression hardened. The DC world has its own Disneyland, Ocean Park, and Universal Studios. Go back and play with Dick there. I'll book the whole place for you. This this wolf cub, was getting increasingly presumptuous. Under Gao Li's firm tone, Xiaoguang reluctantly changed his travel plans. After wrapping up some follow-up work in the Marvel Universe, Gao Li and Xiaoguang prepared to make the dimensional transit. Xiaoguang transformed into an energy form and entered Gao Li's soul. Gao Li closed his eyes and felt for a moment. There was no dramatic change in immediate sensation. Perhaps his status in the Marvel Universe wasn't high enough for a bigger effect. But the capacity Xiaoguang occupied inside his soul had indeed increased, larger than when Gao Li first arrived. Very good. The extra portion should be Kamen Rider Geats' power of creation, Gao Li said, satisfied. He took a deep breath and issued the command. Transmigration, activate. The familiar sensation of the deep sea enveloped him again, slightly heavier this time. It didn't hinder his ascent. When he opened his eyes, he was under the familiar Fadian group ceiling. Next is the important part. Gao Li first used the giant ferocious beast's soul secret technique, together with his supreme power, to do a thorough investigation into Xiaoguang's origin. The power of creation and the origin of a god were not identical, though similar. The former was somewhat lower in rank. With those tools, Gao Li quickly located it. Then he acted. Imprint. Gao Li's move was a forced imposition. He stamped a mark of creation onto Xiaoguang. The Lord of Power imprint system was a fundamental cosmic law unique to the DC universe. Backing this action was the universe itself, the operating system of the DC cosmos. Some supreme beings already held fragments of creation authority, and although Gao Li was not a god king and hadn't possessed creation authority before, his supreme status let him suppress the power of creation long enough to place an imprint. Be good. Let me brand you. From now on, you're mine. Muttering to himself, Gao Li invoked the authority of the Lord of Magic and forced his own imprint into the power of creation. Dong, 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 dong. An illusion blossomed in front of him, and a sacred bell tolled. White feathers drifted everywhere. At the edge of his vision rose 9 colossal white pillars that looked oddly like fluffy tails, foxtails perhaps. They were softer and silkier than Xiaoguang's actual tail, with a faint hint of red along their edges. Before Gao Li could piece it together, a figure appeared. Handsome, black hair, a look oddly familiar. The man's hairstyle didn't do his features many favors, but his clothing seemed right, uncannily familiar. You are Fu Xingsho? Gao Li asked. A new junior actually knows me? Fu Xingsho smiled, studying him. It seems our god-making club is about to get a new member. God-making club? Gao Li blinked. What's that? Fu Xingsho brushed it off casually. Although they aren't here now, with our power, we can watch over one another across time and space. He explained further. Across the countless iterations of Kamen Rider history, several riders eventually reached the realm of God through different paths. I am one of them, and you will be too. A few of us gods are acquainted. We help one another when powerful enemies appear. 2-on-1. Chapter 199. This person has the potential of Omazeo. So that's how it is. Gao Li nodded. But if I look closely, you seem a bit different, said Fu Xingsho, tilting his head. Although you also possess the power of a god, you haven't formally registered here. It seems you've temporarily used my power as a conduit to meet me. Your power is unique, vast, complex, and yet each aspect is very strong. Your judgment is probably right, Gao Li replied. I'll likely be returning very soon. Meeting you was an unexpected result of my process of mastering the power of creation. Gao Li thought of what he might see when he met the creator god, Fu Xingsho. He had expected a white-haired figure. Maybe the difference had to do with not having officially arrived. Based on my sense of the power of creation, you really will be returning soon. I look forward to that meeting. Fu Xingsho waved a hand, and Gao Li's figure gradually faded away. Left alone, the creator god fell into thought. It's rare to encounter a Kamen Rider with so many powers at once, let alone one who has ascended to godhood. It reminds me of Apocalypse. I'm curious. But it's not exactly the same, he mused. Apocalypse's strength lies in him, and the rider powers he channels don't exceed the limits of the original riders. This new god, however, has multiple powers that have each advanced beyond those originals. Fu Xingsho shook his head a little. The younger generation could be terrifying in time. When Gao Li's consciousness returned to the DC universe, he felt the power of creation had become entirely his. At the moment of completion, a realization dawned. He now possessed the authority of creation. What made it crucial was how his authority differed from that of ordinary god kings. A typical god king's creative authority is like constructing a world from scratch over many years, eventually building a god kingdom that still falls short of a true universe. Gao Li's authority, by contrast, resembled reshaping the existing universe. He could alter the current cosmos and turn it into the world he desired. Of course, reshaping a universe on a super-large scale would require an immense amount of wishes as fuel. That was a characteristic of this power of creation. But as Gao Li had casually noted, he could become a self-sustaining vortex of belief, supplying wish power to himself and using the creation authority an infinite number of times. The trade-off was that with only his own wishes as fuel, the greatest scope he could reshape would be relatively limited. Even so, he was satisfied. Who among the Supremes could improvise creation like this? Even God Kings who could create struggled to employ their authority effectively in combat. Their concepts of creation were entirely different. Having just acquired something so valuable, Gao Li didn't rush to draw a lottery. He planned first to jumpstart future human technology in the DC universe. In the Marvel universe, they'd already analyzed almost every technology except the power of creation, so Gao Li could manufacture them now. He began making lists in his head. Desire driver, ID core, small buckles, large buckles. He thought through the advantages of the Kamen Rider system. Compared to most systems, the Desire driver from Kamen Rider Geats had almost no transformation restrictions. It was highly versatile. Almost anyone could transform. By contrast, the Phase system has its own limits. Kabuto's Zector requires recognition. W puts great importance on compatibility with Gaia memories. 4s and the G3, G3X, G4 systems emphasize the Transformer's physical condition. Sickly people might never be able to use those systems effectively. But with the Desire driver, even an elderly man who trembled when he walked could transform and have basic combat ability. That made it ideal for widespread use and dangerous if misused. If it was popularized, it could become a real-life DGP war. He needed to think that through. For now, he put those plans aside. In the black vastness of space, a planet cloaked in perpetual night floated. Apocalypse. Above it, deafening impacts and desolate wails filled the air. Fear and death were its eternal themes. Darkness and chaos intertwined into a tableau of apocalypse. The gate to Darkseid's throne room opened slowly, stone doors parting like a rent in the night. Darkseid sat enthroned, the pinnacle of the dark new gods, awe-inspiring and cold. Time and conquest had carved his face, and his eyes burned with a merciless light. Before him, Desaad and Steppenwolf bowed, prepared to speak of fate and strategy. "Your Majesty, are you truly certain you wish to do this?" Desaad asked, his voice low and hoarse, edged with worry. He was Darkseid's chief scientist and most trusted subordinate, the only one bold enough to question the Lord of Apocalypse like that. Desaad had been born on New Genesis, the world ruled by the High Father, counterpart to Darkseid, but he had been corrupted and turned to Apocalypse. Long ago, Darkseid's mother, Queen Hegra, had threatened Desaad, forcing him to poison Darkseid's beloved Princess Suli so that Hegra could secure the marriage Darkseid would not choose. After Suli's death, whatever fragile love remained in Darkseid vanished, and he became the remorseless dark new god he was now. When the truth came out, Darkseid had not lashed out at Desaad. Instead, he ordered Desaad to poison Hegra. From that day, Desaad became indispensable to Darkseid. Over the years, he had been killed by Darkseid's Omega Beams many times for disobedience, and each time Darkseid resurrected him, swearing it was the last time. It was a twisted, possessive bond. Darkseid narrowed his eyes, a cold, arrogant glitter cut through Desaad. "Desaad, do not ask such foolish questions. You know I need those mother boxes lost on Earth." "Your Majesty, I understand the mother boxes have been on Earth for many years," Desaad said, trembling inwardly. "But there are extraordinary protectors there." Darkseid's eyes darkened like the brewing of a storm. He folded his arms, speaking in a voice deeper than any thunder. "Oh, tell me." "First, the joint leader of Earth's mages and magical gods, God King Nabu," Desaad began, voice wavering. "Trivial," Darkseid interjected with a sneer. "I can destroy him with a flick of my hand." Desaad hesitated, fear sharpening his words. He knew Darkseid's power and ambition well, but Earth's variables made him cautious. "Yes, Your Majesty, yet there is also a Kryptonian." Darkseid's interest lifted. Desaad could hardly believe the Lord of Apocalypse had been watching Earth. For beings as long-lived as the new gods, Superman's arrival might be a near instant. "The Kryptonian's potential is tremendous," Desaad continued, "unexpectedly powerful. He can approach the level of a typical Supreme. His strength should not be underestimated." "Besides that," Desaad added, voice trembling further, "there is the newly ascended Lord of Magic, the Endless Lord. Although his style rarely involves meddling with Earth's affairs, were he to intervene, the consequences would be unimaginable." A flicker of annoyance crossed Darkseid's face, as if these cautions were an affront to his authority. A mere Kryptonian is an ant before me. As for this endless lord, he rose to supreme in an alarmingly short time. How formidable could he be? Darkseid's tone boomed like judgment. Or, do you think I am not their match? Desaad took an involuntary step back. In the presence of Darkseid, even his long service and power felt small. He bowed his head. No, your majesty. I have questioned many things, but never your power. I am simply being cautious, Darkseid said. We shouldn't act rashly, otherwise it will be an ill-prepared adventure. An adventure? Desaad echoed. Darkseid's sneer returned. This universe is filled with war and death. Every day is an adventure, and I am the one who will control it all. Desaad could only watch in silence, helpless. Then Steppenwolf spoke, his voice bold and fervent. Your Majesty, why not ask for my counsel? Darkseid raised an eyebrow. Steppenwolf, would you probe the depths of Earth for me? Steppenwolf stepped forward, radiating confidence and zeal. It would be my honor. It is my mission to retrieve the mother boxes. I will go to Earth and pave the way for your reclamation. I will dedicate everything to Darkseid. Darkseid's gaze moved from Desaad to his ever-loyal general. Steppenwolf's ferocious spirit pleased him. Steppenwolf had never shrunk from battle. He had cleared paths for Darkseid to conquer countless worlds. His original name had been long abandoned in the ages. He simply called himself Steppenwolf. After the obsession of his brother-in-law with the Source Wall and the subsequent events that left Yuga-Khan trapped, Apocalypse fell under Hegra's rule. When Darkseid seized the throne, Steppenwolf accepted the law of might and served him. He had even been the catalyst for the war between Apocalypse and New Genesis. At Darkseid's behest, Steppenwolf helped provoke that conflict, which ended in the Great Cataclysm. He had been defeated and killed by the Highfather in single combat, only to be resurrected on Apocalypse. Very well. Darkseid nodded, finally approving. Steppenwolf, you will represent me and test the weaklings on Earth. Their fear will lead us to the mother boxes. Go, destroy all resistance, and reclaim the power that belongs to us. Bring the mother boxes back. Steppenwolf's eyes flashed with murderous joy. As you command, your majesty, Earth will tremble beneath your will. In an instant, Steppenwolf disappeared into the void. Desaad watched him go, worry still turning within him. Yet he had never doubted the eventual success of Darkseid's plan. Darkseid stood and looked out at the stars. In every speck of cosmic dust, my song of conquest is woven, he had once said. Today, Apocalypse would sing that song to a stubborn, far-off Earth. The stars dimmed in his gaze as if the planets themselves shivered before him. Darkseid intended to bring infinite darkness and destruction to that blue world. Why such persistence? It was simple. This was his war of revenge. Many years ago, when Darkseid had only recently taken the throne and had not yet fully reached his power, before he had the Omega Beams, he had attempted to challenge and conquer Earth. Section 184. At that time, Earth stood at the height of its power. Led by the Greek pantheon, various other pantheons, and the Green Lantern Corps united to resist Darkseid. The Greek gods alone fielded 4 supreme beings. Even Ares, the god of war, temporarily ascended into the supreme realm, his power tied to the intensity of conflict in the world. Darkseid's invasion provoked an unprecedentedly fierce resistance, and the surge of warfare elevated Ares' might to terrifying levels. In the end, the gods and the Green Lanterns repelled Darkseid and seized a mother box. It became the only defeat Darkseid remembered, a bitter humiliation. Ironically, that very defeat revealed the depth of Darkseid's power. He had survived an encirclement by so many supreme beings with only the authority and strength of a newly crowned god-king, an outcome almost unimaginable. He did not accept it as fate. He vowed revenge. The next war would be his final curtain call, and the mother box would be the instrument of total annihilation. The throne room of Apocalypse fell into a heavy, deadly silence. Even the blasted winds seemed to hold their breath. The overture to war had quietly begun. Meanwhile, while Apocalypse plotted, Gao Li was on his way back to Gotham. For the people of the DC universe, little time had passed, but for Gao Li it had been a year. He wanted to visit his family. He had missed them. And he had a custom. Every time he returned from the Marvel universe, he upgraded his older brother, Bruce. Given the crises Gotham had endured, Bruce's equipment still lagged behind. He too often had to watch from the sidelines and risk getting hurt. It was time to strengthen Batman. Gao Li arrived at Wayne Manor with Little Light at his side. As soon as the car stopped, Little Light bounded out like an unbridled colt, rolling and squealing with delight. Woohoo! It's been so long! Just then, Dick returned from school. Little Light grabbed his hand, skipping and tugging him. Gowley watched from a distance, a smile tugging at him as he heard the childish chorus of happy, happy, happy in his head. Dick, long time no see, he called. Huh. Dick blinked, taken aback. It hadn't been that long, after all. Gowley ignored the two kids and went straight to Bruce. Bruce, how's Gotham been lately? Bruce answered in his reserved baritone. It's much better. The armor you supplied is an overwhelming presence here. No gang can stand against it. Some gangs tried to resist. They hired assassins like Bloodsport and Deadshot at high prices. If not for the armor, they would have been a real problem. Gowley raised an eyebrow. Did they hire someone named Deathstroke? You know about them? Bruce looked surprised. They did try to hire Deathstroke. He refused, unusual for him. It seems Deathstroke planned to accept the job for the money, Gowley said. But after investigating, he decided he couldn't overcome the advantage that armor gave you. He was rational enough to walk away. Gowley wasn't surprised. Money-obsessed as Deathstroke might be, he was also brilliant and pragmatic. If a mission would end in failure and tarnish his record, he'd turn it down. Bruce sighed and continued. A few crazies like the Riddler popped up, but nothing that couldn't be handled in a night. Gotham's getting better. No, Gowley said, shaking a finger. Not good enough. The fact that they dared to attack you shows your ability to inspire fear isn't sufficient. Bruce frowned. I've done everything I can. Are you saying I should use fear gas? Gowley laughed. That's crude. True fear comes from the unknown. That's how you used to terrify people. Batman was a mystery, appearing and vanishing unpredictably. He sat opposite Bruce and spun slowly in the chair, laying out his analysis. It worked at first, but the more often you appear, the more people get used to it. Their fear diminishes. Look at them. If they think Batman is only a human who can be killed, they'll even hire assassins. Fear is your real deterrent. Lose that, and your whole method loses meaning. Bruce let the words sink in. He'd always known his most powerful tool was fear. If it eroded, what then? Do you have a way to restore it? He asked. Gowley grinned. Well, there's the simplest way. Kill them all, like Fang. Eliminate anyone who isn't afraid of you. Those who remain will fear you and stop committing crimes. Bruce's expression hardened. That was worse than any dark joke. Gowley waggled his hand. I'm joking, sort of. He pulled a small box from his coat. This is my latest tech. I call it the Mirror World System. He explained the idea simply. Think about horror movies. You find fear in mirrors. Fear comes from the unknown. What you need is to amplify mystery. Bruce nodded. So far, I've used high technology. It's advanced, but still within human comprehension. Exactly. Your opponents can say, it's technology, and that removes the unknown. In a world where high-tech is ubiquitous, technology alone doesn't inspire dread. People will think, if I had similar gear, I could be Batman, and that undermines what you are. Gao Li snapped his fingers. The Mirror World system isn't just tech, barely. It's more like fantasy tech. In the Marvel Universe, I mastered the full Mirror World Kamen Rider system and the bionic Mirror Beast manufacturing techniques Tony discovered. I recreated that here using creation power. If I had to describe it, my magic is really advanced science. What I can give you now is one bionic Mirror Beast, the Dark-Winged Bat. It lets you transform into Kamen Rider Knight. People might call it Bat Rider or Kamen Rider Batman. It suits your style. Once you transform, you'll be able to move between the real world and the mirror world at will. Any reflective surface, mirrors, windows, water, polished metal, becomes a doorway. Bruce's mind raced. If the system worked as described, his movements would become utterly unpredictable. He could slip into the mirror world, traverse the city through reflections, and reappear anywhere. He could infiltrate secure locations, eavesdrop inside safe rooms, and strike without leaving a trace. Criminals wouldn't know what took them. One night, a gang might be whole. The next morning, they could be gone. The thought of enemies falling asleep with that uncertainty chilled him. And you can't hide from a world of mirrors. Gowley added, Unless someone eliminated every reflective surface, which is virtually impossible in this age, their safe spaces vanish. Even trying to do it would cripple their lives and sanity. Bruce looked at the bat emblem on the box. It was Batman's symbol, but altered. He felt a surge of excitement and gratitude. You've helped me many times, but this, I don't know how to thank you. Don't be so formal, Gowley said. One thing about the mirror world, humans can't stay in it for extended periods. Long exposure causes the body to begin breaking down. You'll have to manage your time there. Bruce shook his head. I'm not thanking you just for myself. I'm thanking you for Gotham, for preventing future tragedies. Gowley, for a heartbeat, looked genuinely moved. Giving the public tools to be safer had always been part of his aim. He said solemnly, "A Kamen Rider protects from the shadows. That's exactly what you do. You deserve the Kamen Rider system." But Kamen Rider Knight is just the start, he went on. I have another experiment I want you to help with. It could give you even greater power. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Greater how? Gowley's smile deepened. I call it Survivor. Chapter 201, Gale, Blaze, Infinity. Originally, the power named Survivor hadn't been realized in the Marvel Universe. Tony Stark had been intensifying his research. Now, with creation power, Gowley had a new possibility, to use creation directly to obtain Survivor's power. But Survivor represented the final form of the Mirror World Kamen Rider system, and without understanding its true principles, creating it from nothing was far harder. Gowley had attempted before and found it impossible. At best, he could fabricate 3 cards, Gale, Blaze, and Infinity, but those cards would only be hollow imitations unless Survivor's essence filled them. The core problem was wish power. Gowley didn't know Survivor's true nature and so needed a massive reservoir of wish-based energy for creation power to fill that gap. Alone, he couldn't generate the intensity required. But Bruce Wayne, one of the strongest-willed people in the DC universe, might be different. Gowley wondered if a man like Bruce, lending his belief and will, could supply the missing power. Survivor? Bruce repeated, puzzled by the name. It sounds like someone who endured a catastrophe. It's named for that idea, Gowley explained. The point of the equipment I give you isn't only offensive, it's to keep you alive. I called this power Survivor because I want it to protect you, to help you survive any crisis. Bruce felt the warmth of that intention. He had always felt Gowley's care. He hadn't given nearly enough back. Outwardly, he might play the part of a worldly playboy, but his affection and gratitude were private and reserved. Gowley's expression grew serious. If you cooperate and lend your will to the experiment, I think we might be able to take Kamen Rider Knight to the next level. But I won't pressure you. I only ask you to think about it. Bruce met his brother's gaze. For once, words weren't necessary. The offer itself said enough. Section 185. Thank you, Gowley. The original Bat Mark II armor is already strong enough. Almost no one in Gotham can threaten me, Bruce said. That may be true for Gotham, Gowley countered, but what about beyond its borders? You should have felt it. Enemies who threaten the world are appearing one after another. They're not like Gotham's rogues who rely on cunning. These people each possess tremendous power. Can your current gear really handle that? The answer is clear, Gowley said. If it weren't, you wouldn't have agreed to form and join the Justice League. You need an upgrade. You need to be stronger. Bruce fell silent. Gowley had a way of persuading him like this that always worked. All right, what do you propose? First, you should transform and become Kamen Rider, the Bat Rider, to enforce justice. That way you'll understand the Knight more completely. Gowley had thought it through. It would be far easier for him to design anything once Bruce had a full, practical understanding of how Kamen Rider Knight worked. Bruce would try it that night. Bruce trusted Gowley implicitly, so even though Gowley hadn't explained every detail, Bruce didn't press him. For a man who questioned everything and kept his guards up, that was rare. That night should have found Batman donning his usual gear in the Batcave, but instead, Bruce stayed at Wayne Manor. Master Bruce, what's gotten into you? Has the sun risen in the west? You're not going out all night? Alfred asked, equal parts surprised and secretly pleased. Alfred, I'm going out to try the new gear Gowley brought, Bruce replied. Master Gowley really has brought you back, and now more equipment, Alfred muttered helplessly. He had changed since Gowley became the Lord of Magic. His horizons were broader, and he'd seen incredible things. Still, he watched with curiosity as Bruce held a card case up to the dressing mirror. "Oh, this new device is so small," Alfred remarked. A belt projected from the mirror and snapped around Bruce's waist as if copied and pasted. Bruce took a breath and slid the card case into it. "Transform," he said. Alfred watched, eyes wide, as a rider suit emerged from the mirror and covered Bruce. Even with all he'd seen, Alfred found this method of donning armor fantastical. Worse, Bruce then leaped into the mirror itself. Alfred gaped, stunned for several seconds before reminding himself, "What's so strange? Master Gao Li has demonstrated magic before, and Light Wayne is like a modern miracle. This is perfectly normal." Night had fallen over Gotham. The towers loomed like sleeping beasts. Somewhere in that city of sin, a darker corner had taken root. Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, the Penguin, and the Cobblepot family. Penguin ran the Iceberg Lounge as a front for money laundering and other illicit schemes. He was small, cunning, and ridiculously fond of birds, training them to serve as his eyes and messengers across Gotham and beyond. He was also never seen without an umbrella. His father had died of pneumonia after being caught in the rain, and those umbrellas hid deadly weapons. He had long been one of the shadowy hands that pulled at Gotham's strings. If history had run its original course, Penguin would have been a formidable foe, but recent events had altered everything. Penguin knew Batman would be interested in his activities, but he was not afraid. If he feared the Bat, why run the underworld at all? "I wonder when that Bat will show up. If he comes, let's see how scary he really is. Maybe I can give him trouble," he muttered. Many of Penguin's men treated Batman as a joke, just a man with high tech who could be hurt. They didn't know their fate had already been sealed. Bruce's first target was John Kentley, a mid-level enforcer. Bruce hid in the mirror, his eyes cold, a blade-like spear hidden and ready. John walked down a bright street alone, shadows stretching with every footstep. Then he stopped. An icy chill crawled over him as if fingers ghosted across his skin. Goosebumps rose. "Is someone there?" Only echoes answered. The reflective surface of a billboard behind him began to warp, resolving into the image of Kamen Rider Knight. The billboard reached out, and John was yanked into a world of inverted reflections and silver light, the mirror world. Disoriented, John barely had time before Bruce struck. The fight was brief and brutal. Bruce used his black armor to withstand a pistol shot and felled him with a single precise blow. Next came Tom, the Cobblepot family's chief enforcer. He, too, was dragged into the mirror world before he could react. His training made him counterattack, but Bruce's speed and lethal precision drilled fear into him. What are you?" Tom cried. He swung wildly, but it was futile in that shadowed plane. Bruce answered coldly, his voice hollow through the mask. "I am vengeance." There was no emotion behind the words, only the promise of punishment. Pain and screams were swallowed by the darkness. Bruce held back enough not to kill, but the strikes were decisive. Tom went down, unconscious. One by one, other Cobblepot lieutenants vanished. No bodies, no cries, just reports and rumors. In places where they had disappeared, some bystanders found only fragments of cold, reflective glass, mirror shards that seemed to tell the city sin would be judged. Gotham's underworld panicked. "Could it be Batman?" one thug whispered. "The Bat's changed. He's not the same." Bruce moved between the mirror world and reality without expression, listening to the spreading dread he had engineered. Beneath his mask burned a harsh sense of justice. The disappearances terrified the Cobblepot family. Fear spread through their ranks like a beast turned loose. "What is this? What kind of trick?" Penguin muttered, voice trembling with despair as his organization unraveled. For Penguin and his crew, the night was an inescapable nightmare. As the last member saw his distorted reflection in a puddle and then sank into unconsciousness, the bloody chapter the Cobblepot family had written was closed by Bruce's hand. Silent, inevitable judgment. Chapter 202, Trust, Gao Li, Gain Eternal Life. A few days later, Bruce found Gao Li holed up in the lab. Gao Li wasn't experimenting, he was watching the news. Headlines splashed across the screen. Gang members disappear one after another. Mysterious Rider becomes a suspense thriller. Gotham's new mysterious hero. Is this Batman's new identity? Articles speculated on the Rider who had appeared at night, a shadowy figure whose presence had unnerved the city's criminals. Witnesses described him as a faint silhouette in the dark. The gangs were rattled. Rumor ran through Gotham that perhaps Batman had adopted a new persona. Citizens reported a renewed sense of safety as gang leaders vanished, and the papers asked whether the city's dark guardian had changed shape. Gao Li closed the monitor and asked, curious, "So where are those missing criminals?" Bruce replied, "I knocked them out and am holding them in a warehouse. Letting the rumor spread does more to terrorize the underworld than turning them over to the police right away." "True," Gao Li said. "If you'd just taken them to the station, everyone would assume nothing had changed. The fear would fade. This way, the effect is amplified." Gao Li shook his head. "You'd still end up handing them over to the police. Isn't the outcome the same? If you ask me, making them disappear forever would have the greatest effect." Bruce bristled inwardly. After all, the people Bruce targeted had to be worse than ordinary criminals. Either they'd ruined several families or led multiple lives. Gotham's criminal underground was relentlessly brutal. Gao Li was right that, compared to other cities, Gotham's gangs were on another level. "You know I wouldn't do that," Bruce said. "It's a self-imposed rule, especially now that the gear you give me keeps getting stronger. That restraint matters even more." He paused, wanting Gao Li to understand. "I'm not doing this for nothing. If they come to know me as Batman and to recognize my methods, that's by design. With what's happened these past few days, they'll learn that my methods are inescapable, that there's nowhere truly safe or secret left." Gao Li waved a hand. All right. As long as you're safe, pursue your beliefs. I won't stop you. What I need to do is make sure you don't get hurt. Or worse," Bruce said lightly. "I'm not here to argue philosophy. I'm no psychologist." Philosophical debates between them were old ground. As Fang, Gao Li and Bruce had clashed plenty, neither expected to convert the other. Gao Li's stance had always been, "You can keep your no-kill rule. I won't stop you, and I won't force others to follow it." Bruce nodded. "Let's drop it for now. Since you think I qualify, how do I become a survivor next?" "Simple. New Gao will live forever." Gao Li's face lit up with a mock-holy glow. "Honestly, I'm basically a god. All you have to do is believe in me and love me." Bruce stared for a moment, then forced a dry smile. "Of course I trust you, and I love you very much." No, religiously," Gao Li said, wagging a finger. "Xiao Guang is the sun, right? So obviously I'm the Saint Father." Seeing Bruce's deadpan expression, Gao Li sighed. His brother's sense of humor had always been painfully unfunny. "Alfred always told me you were boring," he muttered. Then his tone turned serious. "But I wasn't entirely joking. I really have become something like a god. Think of it like the gods from Eastern legend, something cultivated by practice." "So you can use your power of creation to conjure the power of a survivor," Bruce said, digesting the idea. "And it requires my strong desire to be realized." Gao Li nodded. "Something like that. You have to make the wish, truly want it." Bruce frowned. "Sounds less like a deity and more like Aladdin's lamp." Gao Li blinked, then shrugged. "There's a difference. My wish granting is unlimited, but the bigger the wish, the stronger the desire needed. I hope you can reach that." It made sense, in a way Bruce understood, the power of faith. He squared his shoulders. "All right, let's begin." "I'll leave you some quiet," Gao Li said, stepping away. "I can stay transformed outside. I'll sense when you meet the standard." Once alone in the lab, Bruce set himself to work. He'd taken self-hypnosis training in the League of Shadows. With his discipline, it was a natural tool. He found a mirror, closed his eyes, inhaled, and whispered to his reflection, "I wish to obtain the power of a survivor." His voice was low but steady. "I need stronger power to protect this city." He sank into meditation, repeating and deepening the suggestion. Will and intent, practiced over years, turned into a single-pointed hunger. "I yearn to obtain the power of a survivor. I must obtain the power of a survivor." The lab grew so still that each breath seemed amplified. The quiet felt charged, as if something unseen was gathering. Outside, Gao Li felt it too. He smiled, extended a finger, and pointed toward the lab. A beam of light shot from his fingertip, tracing across the distance, and slipped into the depths of Bruce's heart. Bruce felt it first as a connection, his pulse syncing with something vast. An invisible current flowed through him. "Bruce, your wish has been heard." Gao Li's voice echoed in his mind like a hymn. Power poured into Bruce, igniting him from within. It hummed in his blood, a tense, ancient force. Gowli intoned words that sounded part prayer, part spell. Bruce's consciousness went into a vast dark, and then a beam of light exploded from his chest, filling the laboratory. That light felt like a bridge between the earth and the heavens. It worked, Gowli breathed, looking up. He knew Bruce's will was exceptional. The desire Bruce could marshal far exceeded that of most people. When Gowli supplied the creative spark to a will that strong, the result was enormous. As the light faded, a card hovered in the air. A golden wing pattern graced one side, set against a mysterious blue background. Across the title bar was a single word, Fang. Bruce reached out and took it. The moment he touched the card, a wind like a hurricane rushed through the room. In that instant, he realized what it meant. If he placed this card into his summoner, he would evolve into Kamen Rider Batman, Fang's survivor form. "Congratulations," Gowli said, clapping as he stepped back into the lab. "With this power and your ability to move freely between the mirror world and the real world, you'll finally have the hard power you've been missing. You won't just be a bystander anymore." Bruce felt the weight of that promise. He had always excelled at planning, at evasion, at using cunning to balance out physical disadvantage. But in impromptu fights, he'd been underpowered. That would change now. "I won't waste it," he said solemnly, slipping the Fang survivor card into his case. Gowli had other business to attend to. He had a hunch something big was coming, a premonition that wasn't just a mood. When his creative power had surged to reshape the survivor card, it had briefly torn away some of the mist that always surrounded his foresight. For the first time in a while, he'd glimpsed a sliver of the future. No prayers this time, he told himself, summoning a golden lottery machine. Straight to the draw. He clicked the button and the machine spun. As usual, it erupted into specks of light at the end. But this time, the specks did not dissolve into his mind or condense into an object. They merged into a single, larger sphere of light. Gowli reached out. The moment his fingers touched the orb, the lab dissolved around him. He was in a boundless starfield, an endless universe of pinprick lights. He moved forward, drawn in, becoming part of the cosmos. A brilliant object dominated the scene, dazzling and violent, spewing jets of light and ionized matter. A blazar. Gowli's pulse raced. He felt a resonance, as if this cosmic engine recognized him. The blazar's light intensified, pulling him closer until he felt himself lighten, transform, taking the shape of a bird built of starlight, swooping toward the source. Up close, the radiance was overwhelming. For a moment, the light vanished and was replaced by a halo, warm and inviting. From within, it reached a vast white hand of light, the form of a giant of light, impossibly kind and powerful. "Blazar Ultraman," Gowli whispered in awe. Recognition bloomed. He clasped the giant's hand and was absorbed, merged into that luminary being. Barriers fell away. He and the blazar's light became one. With a soft click, the vision shattered. Only an instant had passed back in the lab, but Gowli knew the truth. Another Ultraman-like power had nested itself within him. He looked at his wrist, felt the new presence, and clenched his fist. After Zoffy, now a blazar's power. The Lord of Magic smiled. The blazar's energy was now a part of him. Gowli could feel it clearly. With a single thought, he could summon the blazar bracelet and its corresponding glitter stone. Inside him, Blazar Ultraman felt disoriented. Something about this human host was different. After entering Gowli's body, Blazar felt suppressed. That was unusual. Normally, after an Ultraman merged with a human, the Ultraman dominated. Ultraman Zero and Ultraman Z could even seize control of their hosts in critical moments. Hosts could resist, but it was like an arm trying to twist a thigh. Sometimes, when the Ultraman hadn't properly set up the merge, Host and Ultraman would tussle over control, at most a 50-50 split. But Blazar couldn't even reach a 91-9 split with Gowli. What a powerful host. "Blazar, can you hear me?" Gowli tried to communicate. Blazar answered with a strange cry. Gowli stared. "Brother, please speak English or Chinese. Japanese would even be fine. I really can't understand you like this." Communication difficulties didn't dampen Gowli's curiosity. This was his first time fully experiencing an Ultraman's power. There would be many days for them to coexist, and Gowli was confident he could break the communication barrier. For now, he had plans to follow through on a project he'd already decided. This creative power originating from Fuxiying Shou, strictly speaking, it's a kind of Kamen Rider power, right? I wonder if it can be made into a memory. He wondered whether the result would be a Gaia memory or an Akashic memory. No more talk. He was going to try. Far away on Paradise Island, the stars shone clearer than ever, scattering light over emerald forests and golden beaches. But tonight, an unfamiliar shadow swept across that peaceful land. A distortion in the air opened above the beach, like an invisible hand ripping a hole in reality and revealing a harsh, chaotic world beyond. From the rift strode a tall figure in dark silver armor, eyes sharp as frozen blades, Steppenwolf. Behind him came an army of parademons, ghost-like, eerie, Darkseid's most capable soldiers. Amazon, it's been a long time. A storm is coming. Are you ready? Steppenwolf's voice was low and provocative, rolling over the night sky. The guardians of Paradise Island noticed the disturbance. Hecate stood in the watchtower, silver pupils reflecting the warped heavens. She sounded the horn of war. Its alarm pierced the night. The Amazons donned their armor and readied themselves under Queen Hippolyta. They had always defended their mysterious homeland with courage and strength. But Steppenwolf's arrival posed an unprecedented threat. Frontline reports confirmed the worst. Steppenwolf, the ancient dark new god, led the parademon horde across half the island like a black torrent, destroying everything mercilessly. The Amazons were brave, but their attacks barely scratched him. Arrows were mere annoyances, swords like massages. The parademons seemed endless, replenishing their numbers no matter the losses. After so many years of peace, the Amazons have grown weak, Steppenwolf sneered, raising his battle axe. Dark energy burst from its tip as he cut down warrior after warrior. Screams filled the air as his eyes mocked their resistance. Hippolyta watched from the rear, face grave and resolute. These invaders don't understand what terrifying power they have provoked. She raised her longsword like thunder. Ladies, support the front lines, defend our home, and drive out these lawless villains. A chorus of cries answered. Fire and starlight lit the battlefield as the Amazons reinforced the lines, repelling parademon charges. Arrows blazed like meteors. Explosive impacts cracked the earth. Antiope led a countercharge, her twin-bladed shield spinning through the dark and felling shadowy foes. But Steppenwolf did not care for these obstacles. His goal was the mother box guarded in the temple. He left the chaos of battle and made straight for it. Hippolyta realized his intent and charged, cutting through parademons and confronting Steppenwolf with thunderous momentum. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying as metal met metal. Humph! Hippolyta struck hard. The blow seemed to make Steppenwolf take notice. You shameless fiend, she roared. How dare you invade our home and trample our dignity? Steppenwolf sneered. Your dignity? Meaningless to me. What I want is the mother box. Hand it over, and perhaps I'll spare your lives. Hippolyta gritted her teeth. She knew the mother box could not be allowed to return to Apocalypse. But Steppenwolf's power was overwhelming. Ridiculous. Do you think these cheap tricks can stop me? I am Steppenwolf, loyal servant of the Dark Lord. The mother box will belong to Darkseid. His voice sounded from the abyss, each word like a blade. Paradise Island has never surrendered and never will, Hippolyta answered. Is that so? Steppenwolf taunted, cleaving downward. Then go to death. The battle raged. Several Amazon instructors rushed to Hippolyta's aid. A dozen or so engaged Steppenwolf together, their swordplay brilliant and rhythmic, but his strength was greater. Each clash revealed his cold cruelty. Around them, parademons surged and the Amazons' heroic efforts slowly faltered. The armor on Steppenwolf's body absorbed chaotic energy, making him nearly indestructible. On the brutal field of war, the queens and her warriors felt the widening power gap and the oppressive weight of defeat. Even the strongest, led by Hippolyta, showed signs of exhaustion after repeated clashes. Despair crept in, but they fought on, determined not to fall without a fight. Queen, Antiope called, desperately fending off a parademon and looking toward Hippolyta with fierce panic. Hippolyta could not answer. She and several instructors had been struck down and struggled to stand. Steppenwolf took the opening, crossed the sea of fire, and entered the temple. When he emerged, Hippolyta caught up and faced him again for a final clash. But after finding the mother box, Steppenwolf was no longer intent on a lengthy fight. His fist struck hard, leaving a crack across the queen's shield and sending her flying backward. I want you to see with your own eyes the mother box returning to Apocalypse. This is the beginning of your graves, he declared, and amid terrified cries, he lifted the glowing device. With a sonic boom, the mother box created a spatial passage. Steppenwolf slipped through, the box secure in his grasp, and vanished toward his next target. He took the mother box with shocking ease and left the conquered land before dawn. Days later, when Gowley met Diana again, she looked exhausted. Diana had sought him out, though the Justice League's headquarters were still under construction, and Gowley wasn't even a League member. She came to him first. They had agreed to exchange information. My home, Paradise Island, was attacked, Diana said plainly. The mother box, guarded by the Amazons for generations, was stolen. This is the most serious crisis Earth has faced. More serious than Doomsday? Gowley frowned. Diana took a deep breath. Believe me, the danger involved is far more terrifying than Doomsday. So gather Superman, Flash, Batman, and the others. I need to explain this threat clearly and get everyone ready, Gowley said. He nodded, though inwardly he grumbled. Why did he have to be the one to gather them? How did he, who wasn't even in the Justice League, end up sounding like their leader? Soon everyone assembled at Wayne Manor at Gowley's summons. According to my mother, the one who came to Paradise Island was Steppenwolf, a dark new god. But our real concern is the Dark Lord behind him, Darkseid, Diana recounted, and Bruce was the first to ask, "Why are you so familiar with these new gods?" Diana explained. The gods of this universe are divided into new gods and old gods. The old gods are like my father Zeus, the mythic deities you know. The new gods are different. They represent a grander, universe-level authority. You can think of them as gods of cosmic responsibility. Clark and Barry understood the implication at once. This was a threat on a universal scale. Diana continued, I know about the new gods because, countless years ago, Apocalypse, led by Darkseid, the king of the dark new gods, launched an invasion of Earth. That war was so fierce the sky and earth were shrouded, the sun and moon lost their light. All the old gods united to resist, and reinforcements even came from beyond our world. Together, they barely drove the invaders back. Because of that war, the warrior races who fought, such as my Amazons, kept records and legends that are remarkably accurate. The gods of myth once united? I can't believe it, Barry said, excited and astonished. If Earth repelled them before, we can do it again, if we work together. Diana shook her head. You're thinking too simply. Darkseid back then wasn't at his peak. Even so, after facing several god kings, Darkseid managed to retreat with only injuries. That was absurd. The Darkseid of today must be even more terrifying. In the ancient war, Earth's victory was barely a Pyrrhic one. Darkseid's growing strength could be the final straw. Diana omitted one more crucial detail. In the legends she later consulted, Ares, the god of war, had been one of the pivotal forces. The divine scale of war he commanded provided enormous power. But Ares had been killed by Diana during World War I, a fact that left her in an awkward position, having lost one of the major forces that might have turned the tide in a decisive battle. Success and failure both come down to power. Ares' gift set his ceiling incredibly high, but it also meant his strength depended on the intensity of war. If the fighting wasn't fierce enough, his power waned. That power needed catastrophic war to fuel it. World War I-scale conflicts might only raise Ares a little above Diana. Diana, however, had triggered a small cosmic explosion, and Ares, the god of war, was finished. Bruce listened, composed. In that ancient invasion, did the Amazons record how large Apocalypse's army was? What exactly are we facing? Diana hesitated, then said, I don't want to frighten you, but when you hear it, you'll understand why I say this crisis is far worse than Doomsday. The basic soldiers are called parademons. They're biological weapons, captives modified with apocalypsean technology. They're effectively endless in number. They have no will of their own. They obey Darkseid and nothing else. Each can fly. Their speed and strength exceed human limits. They're enhanced soldiers, and they come in overwhelming numbers. At that, everyone grew serious. Flying, superhuman speed and strength, and sheer hordes, these were nightmare troops. Bruce thought, if I'm only barely at human limits, every parademon is stronger than me. How many resources would it take to stop one? Diana continued, Above the Parademons are the Furies, Darkseid's Duola Royal Guard. They're all female new gods from Apocalypse, martial experts, brutal, trained and brainwashed to die for Darkseid. There's also a Dark Elite, powerful individuals among the Dark New Gods. In those two ranks, everyone is a true god. It's likely each of them would rival me in power. Even Clark shivered. Dozens or hundreds of Dianas attacking at once. Superman might have to fall back. A force like that spread across the world could lay waste to nations. Earth's armies would be helpless. The ancient gods' achievement in barely repelling Darkseid when they joined together suddenly felt staggering. Diana named two leaders of the Furies, Granny Goodness and Kanto. Granny Goodness often disguises herself as a housewife-like old woman, but she's among the strongest guards. Kanto is Apocalypse's master assassin. As the elite of the new gods, they're top-tier power even among gods. Diana had laid out the horror clearly. Even without Darkseid himself, every soldier under him was powerful, and their numbers were vast. After a heavy silence, Clark raised his hand. About the mother box that was stolen. What exactly is it? I don't know everything, Diana admitted. A mother box usually looks like a small box, like a handheld computer. Many new gods have them, but the one Apocalypse left behind in the ancient war is special, probably the core of their power. That's why Darkseid wants it back so desperately. Legend says if the three mother boxes become one trinity, they form a unified force capable of destroying almost anything. Even gods could not stop it. I estimate that even Superman's steel body would be vulnerable to that unified force. If the god kings who once ruled the universe feared those three becoming one, there's good reason. Even the greatest powers might not withstand them. Bruce drew a conclusion. Then our top priority is to stop them from getting a mother box. Diana, do you know where the other two are? Diana answered. On the Messiah's records, the three were entrusted to humanity, the Amazons, and Atlantis. I don't know where the human one is. For Atlantis, I contacted an Atlantean named Arthur through Gowley's method. Atlantis has been absent from the surface for a long time. Most humans think it a myth. Arthur is our only lead. Gowley spoke up. He hadn't expected his earlier collecting of strange individuals and events to pay off. So what did Arthur say? Diana frowned. I told Arthur how serious this is, but Arthur said he doesn't have much contact with Atlantis anymore. He tried to reach his teacher, Wake, but got no reply. Arthur has never been to Atlantis and doesn't know its exact location. All he can do is keep trying to contact them. No sooner had she finished than her phone rang. Arthur's voice came through. Miss Prince, Wake replied. Atlantis is in bad shape. There was a major battle. That's why he didn't answer earlier. Did Steppenwolf raid Atlantis? Diana's heart dropped. Did he succeed? Was the mother box taken? I don't know about the mother box or Steppenwolf, Arthur said hurriedly. They're still clearing strange creatures left behind. The fighting isn't fully over. I've asked Waike to send someone to pick me up. I'm going to help clear the remaining threats. I probably won't be able to contact you for a while. I'm hanging up now. Arthur may not have loved Atlantis, but he couldn't stand by while his people suffered. For Atlanteans, bloodlines mattered. Nobility often meant greater combat power, so Arthur going to fight mattered. Wake would not refuse his aid. Wait, Diana called. The call was on speaker, and everyone heard. Gowley cut in. Wait for us. We'll go to Atlantis, too. We might be able to help. Arthur sounded anxious. Wakey's people are almost there. I can't wait. Sorry, I don't know who you are, but thank you. Gowley's hand shimmered as he prepared a spell. Don't worry, a second is enough. A Bifrost-like bridge of color descended, enveloping them and teleporting everyone to Arthur's location. Gowley had Diana's lead, and he'd tracked Arthur's coordinates. One moment, Arthur was on the phone in his lighthouse. The next, Gowley, Clark, Bruce, Barry, and the others stood at his doorstep. Arthur gaped. How did you get here so fast? Have you been following me? Gowley rolled his eyes. That light pillar you saw? It was teleportation magic. Magic? Arthur's eyes went wide. Can you teach me? Gowley was spared a long explanation by the arrival of Wakey's envoy, a few stern Atlantean soldiers who treated Arthur's half-blood status with barely concealed disdain. Please come aboard, they said. Arthur climbed in, then hesitated. My lord, Wakey only said to pick you up. Other land dwellers don't have the right to go to Atlantis. We don't have time for that. one soldier snapped when Arthur stalled. "If we delay, you'll be the one to answer for it." They brought Gao Li and the others in and explained on the way. The main force is still fighting, but the enemy achieved their objective. The creatures left behind are covering their retreat. "When did they succeed?" Gao Li asked. "About an hour ago," the soldier replied. Gao Li and the others exchanged looks. There was no way to turn back time. Apocalypse's Parademon army hit the underwater kingdom like a storm. Nightmarish, fanatic, and equipped with apocalypsean gear adapted for the deep, they ignored obstacles and tore through the ancient civilization. They roared and wielded massive weapons, turning the ocean into a battlefield. Atlantean soldiers in silver protective suits returned fire with laser cannons, standing their ground amid the pressure and darkness. Beams of light braided through the water. Parademons were tough, but sustained laser fire shredded them. A Parademon leader broke from a bombardment and charged. Several meters tall, it glowed an eerie green. Its maw bristled with fangs. The Atlantean squad tightened their formation. "For Atlantis," the captain cried, and a laser gun unleashed blinding light. They opened up, but the leader hardly faltered. It roared and swatted several soldiers into pieces. The survivors understood the battle was worse than they'd thought. Among the defenders, a red-haired warrior stood out. Clad in scale armor, proud and fierce, her eyes were unyielding. Mila, Arthur later told them, had arrived before to look for him. She commanded the ocean currents with hand gestures. When she waved, surging streams knocked parademons off balance and flung them into vortices. Her presence steadied the line. Gao Li's group hit the edge of the fight. Arthur introduced Mela breathlessly. "She's Mela. She came looking for me, probably a princess. Atlantis is divided into kingdoms. I don't know all the details." Seawater ran red with blood and strewn limbs, a costly fight. Gao Li took charge. "Move out and clear the battlefield. Diana, Barry, water doesn't suit you. Do you have gear to borrow?" Clark needed no help. He cut through water like lightning, his heat vision and raw strength unrivaled beneath the waves. Bruce had his Kamen Rider armor. Hearing their intent, the Atlantean soldiers set aside their distrust and produced 2 standard protective suits for Diana and Barry. "Put these on." The Justice League plunged in together. Clark streaked like a comet through the sea, each motion a force of destruction, eyes blazing heat like stars. He swung, and the shockwave sent a pack of parademons tumbling. Diana moved with the grace of a warrior queen. Her long sword traced lethal arcs of water. Her bracelets clashed and sent ripple shockwaves that hurled charging parademons aside. Bruce, in Kamen Rider Knight, fought at Arthur's side. "Trick Vent," Bruce called. He split into 4 clones, independent, coordinated, each able to attack simultaneously. The battlefield became a whirlwind of blades, lasers, tidal strikes, and superhuman force as the Allied defenders pushed back against the apocalypsean onslaught. Section 189, Nasty Vent. Bruce unleashed a barrage of sonic vibrations, directly disturbing the seawater and clearing a wide swath of parademons in an instant. Arthur answered in kind, wielding the weapon his mother had left him. Every throw churned the water and impaled enemies with brutal force. Barry, as fast as ever, was a blur, after images streaking across the battlefield, darting through the parademon ranks to launch sudden, devastating strikes. The addition of these 5 heroes bolstered the underdog Atlantean soldiers. Their combined power felt like an impenetrable wall. The parademon's assaults faltered, while the heroes' attacks grew ever more relentless. "Hurrah!" Clark roared, clapping his hands together. A shockwave radiated outward, sending parademons hundreds of meters away. Diana followed, her bracelets spilling brilliant light that shattered parademons into pulp, showing the savage efficiency of the Amazons. Bruce and his shadow clones struck in unison, their sonic waves whipping the water and sweeping scores of parademons into the abyss. Each swing of Arthur's weapon left a bloody trail. Barry's speed sent foes flying faster than anyone could follow. The Atlantean soldiers who had been holding the line were stunned by the sheer ferocity of these 5. Never had they seen such power. "Who are they?" someone whispered. "Are they from the surface? They're that strong?" No one could hide their shock. Superman alone cut through enemies like one man against 10,000. Soon the Justice League's coordinated assault had flipped the battle. The Parademon horde that had seemed unstoppable was now in tatters. The heroes moved as one, each exploiting their strengths, pushing back the remnants of Steppenwolf's forces and protecting the retreat. Haha, so this is what coordinated combat feels like, Arthur laughed, addressing Diana and Bruce. More fun than I expected. Maybe I should accept your invitation to join the League. Diana extended her hand. Welcome, Arthur. Gao Li had been watching like a silent observer, partly because the Justice League's power made him unnecessary against mere parademons, and partly because of something else. Since the fight had begun, Blazer Ultraman had been screaming in his mind, desperate to get out and fight. The Blazer brace glowed hot against Gao Li's wrist. Without his own iron control, the bracelet might have burst loose on its own. Quiet, quiet. Gao Li rubbed his temples. Fine, fine. Next chance you get, I'll let you out. Blazer quieted down at last, a warrior's battle lust finally restrained. Gao Li found it odd that an Ultraman should be so eager. Perhaps Planet Blazer bred a simple, straightforward people. After the fight, Wakey formally hosted the Justice League. He led them into an air pocket within the palace and posted guards to keep everyone out. There's a dry place down here in the sea? Barry, the most curious, asked. Wakey nodded. There are several. Among Atlanteans, most can breathe underwater, but only those of noble blood can breathe air freely. It's a status thing. Gao Li absorbed that with interest. It made sense. Being able to breathe air was a symbol of rank among the Atlanteans. Wakey continued, The king should have hosted you, but his majesty is tied up with disaster recovery. I'll be brief. His absence suits me, Arthur muttered. Easier to be frank then. Wakey's expression turned solemn. Crisis has come. The kingdom is shrouded in shadow. More than ever, we need stronger leadership. You want me to be king? Arthur frowned. I've said this a dozen times. I don't want the throne. Times have changed, Wakey said. You've seen the devastation. Your people need you. Even if only to save lives, to stand as a rallying symbol, you must take this path, Arthur. Arthur spread his hands. You say that well, but I'm from the surface. No one will take me seriously. You'll have to reclaim this to win them, Wakey said, producing a scroll. I've prepared it for you. Clark cleared his throat. Do we need to wait outside? No, Wakey replied. Today proved your character. As Arthur's friends, I hope you'll help him. Bruce leaned forward. What is this scroll? Wakey gave the scroll to Arthur and explained. You land dwellers may have heard the tales of Poseidon's lost trident. It's not just a myth. It was forged from Poseidon's cold iron by the greatest smith of our age for Atlantis' first ruler. The trident was said to contain the power to rule the ocean, Poseidon's own might. Diana's eyes sharpened. What happened to it? This goes back to before the fall, Wakey said. When Atlantis sought more power, their greed spawned catastrophe. The city sank. The king went into exile, and no one saw him or the trident again. He continued, This scroll was recently unearthed by our archaeology team. It's an ancient record from the First Dynasty, likely the king's final message and perhaps the trident's location. But the technology used is lost. We can't decode it. Bruce, Clark, and Barry looked to Gao Li. Clark smiled. Mr. Wayne, can you analyze it? Break the encryption? Wakey's face went blank. Didn't they hear him? Even we couldn't decipher it. Who is this Mr. Wayne? He watched Gao Li warily as Clark's blind confidence filled the air. No. Wakey blurted before Arthur could answer. This device is rumored to have anti-tampering encryption. Forced decryption could trigger self-destruction. We don't have to force it, Wakey added. There's a lost kingdom marker on the scroll. If you reach the original site of Atlantis, there may be a way to unlock it naturally. Gao Li considered that. Many ancient devices have self-destruct fail-safes. Better not to brute force it. He wasn't omnipotent. He couldn't guarantee a safe analysis. Fine, he said. Superman, Batman, Flash, Wonder Woman, keep searching for mother boxes and protect them. Although Gao Li had not formally joined the League, he found himself assigning tasks, and bizarrely no one objected. They accepted his leadership instinctively. Bruce asked, What about you? I'll go to the Lost Kingdom with Arthur, Gao Li replied. I've checked Arthur's background. He wasn't schooled in technology. It's safer if I accompany him. Arthur flushed. You nosy bastards, he thought. But he couldn't deny the truth. He knew nothing about technology. Having Gao Li, the tech expert the League trusted, alongside him put him at ease. Gao Li, meanwhile, had his own reasons. Poseidon's power was the very definition of prime research material. All right, use that Bifrost bridge to get us there. Save time, Bruce said. Gao Li nodded, raised a hand, and began to chant. Wakey's brow furrowed. Magic here, beneath the waves. Before he could object, a rainbow beam pierced the water, enveloping the Justice League and sending them away. What is that ability? Wakey muttered. Just magic, Gao Li said lightly. Come on, Arthur. They were about to leave when a commotion erupted at the palace doors. Guards were thrown aside as a body of soldiers rushed in. Who goes there? Wakey's face turned white as more soldiers surrounded them. A burly man with slicked-back hair strode in, sneering. I set listening posts. I knew you were up to something, Wake. Your Majesty, Wakey stammered. Arthur hissed to Gao Li. That's Ohm, my half-brother, my mother's other child. Ohm's voice was cold. Hand over the relic. It belongs to the kingdom. That half-breed can't take it. Wakey tried to reason. Your Majesty, this is not the time for xenophobia. The kingdom is in peril. You can come with Arthur to retrieve the trident. Oh, please, Ohm laughed. What right does he have to go with me? I am the legitimate heir, the true king. Don't be naive. Wakey's voice hardened. Even so, it's too late. I've put Arthur's friends on the case. You saw them on the battlefield, powerful allies. Don't provoke such enemies for the sake of petty pride. Ohm narrowed his eyes and looked contemptuously at Gao Li. And this one didn't even fight. From what I've heard, he's a technology man, maybe some teleport tricks. What can he do to stop me? Wakey bristled. Your Majesty, calm yourself. You two stop, Gao Li interrupted, raising his hand. I don't have time for family squabbles, and I'm not interested in your arguments. But Wake is right. We should retrieve the trident. I'll make this simple. You join us and we'll compete fairly. Or you step aside and Arthur and I go. Between the two options, I'm being honest. I'll naturally favor Arthur. Gao Li's tone was righteous enough that Ohm blinked. You, Ohm scoffed. Who are you to interfere in Atlantean affairs? You're an outsider. Gao Li frowned. It was a fair point. He might sound out of place. Then, with a calm confidence that stunned everyone, he said, Who said I'm not Atlantean? Ohm, Wakey, and Arthur stared at him in disbelief, never expecting such an answer. Actually, I'm a lost member of Atlantis' royal family. When Atlantis fell in ancient times, not everyone went under the sea. Some were scattered elsewhere, Gao Li said, putting on a solemn expression and bluffing confidently. The royal family has two distinct traits. First, they can breathe freely in water and in air. He paused for effect. And second, I realized this just now, Mela, the one who can control the sea, is proof of the other trait. Control of water is a royal talent. Ohm frowned. Gao Li's description matched what everyone knew. Nobles born of that bloodline could survive in water and air, and water control was an extremely rare gift. Arthur also looked thoughtful. He could manipulate water too, but only very weakly, just enough to stanch or nudge, not to fight. In the original history, when Steppenwolf's missile blasted through Gotham Harbor, Arthur's water power only bought a few seconds by pushing the flow aside. For most of the royal family, control of water was negligible. Mela's skill was 1 in 10,000 talent, undeniable proof of a noble lineage. Gao Li's eyes gleamed. That's perfect. He very nearly smiled as he prepared to use the Kamen Rider Aqua experience card. I have both of those traits. No one could respond immediately. Wakey was the first to recover. He didn't know why Gao Li had raised the subject, but now it made sense to follow the allies' lead. By royal custom, in a dispute like this, you must accept a challenge and decide the relic's ownership before the people, he said. Coincidentally, this duel will also test his claim. Your Majesty, you prize tradition. You wouldn't refuse, would you? Ohm shot Wakey an icy look and then erupted. Fine. Let's see what rubbish you've brought. He was supremely confident. He saw himself as the most outstanding of the royal line, the true king of Atlantis, the rightful ocean lord of the Seven Kingdoms. The proclamation calmed the crowd and turned the awkward standoff into a spectacle. Now the choice lay with Gao Li. Arthur leaned in, whispering, Why not use that teleportation magic and take Wakey and me away? No need to bother with him. Wakey shook his head. Don't. Ohm knows you can teleport and therefore didn't watch you closely because he's absolutely sure of Atlantis' strength. If we ran, he would hunt us to the ends of the earth and never stop. That's exactly why he's not afraid of us fleeing. Gao Li merely smiled, a villainous, confident smile. I'm not worried. If he attempts to destroy me, he should be prepared for the consequences, he said, then grew serious. But we don't need to run. We'll defeat him in the traditional ceremony. I have ways to handle him. It's just a matter of how he wants to lose. Wei warned, if you can't beat him using Atlantean power, the people won't be convinced. Then I'll beat him with the power I just mentioned. Gao Li arched a brow. Although I didn't fight in the big battle, I watched how the royal family fought. I noticed something. They can breathe in both environments, but they can't transition seamlessly between them. He explained, to breathe underwater, you have to have water in your lungs. To breathe air, you must expel it. In the battle I watched, they avoided Myla's water vacuum zones. A few royal members got caught in those vacuums, fell when they lost buoyancy, and coughed seawater out of their lungs. That proves my point. Water control is the natural enemy of royals who aren't skilled in it. If I can manipulate the environment, I'll win. Arthur and Waiki considered it and admitted the observation was astute. Gao Li had read the battlefield with one glance. As for whether I truly have royal traits, Gao Li added, you can decide for yourself. He flipped the Kamen Rider Aqua experience card, which activated and formed a driver around his waist. Transform! Seawater rushed into the arena, guided by the driver, coalescing on Gao Li's body into a suit of armor. Kamen Rider Aqua was a rider whose strength grew with the environment. Here, in a seawater-rich arena, the armor and the flow gave him a huge boost. Gao Li's water control ability also suppressed many Atlanteans, so he felt sure of victory. He layered a few spells on himself, hardening, great strength, and high speed, because the Wayne family didn't enter battles unprepared. They set the Ring of Fire arena quickly. Built like a Roman Colosseum, it could hold a mass of spectators. Atlanteans were intensely martial and wanted to witness a decisive fight to lift their spirits after Steppenwolf's invasion and the Parademon assaults. The crowd roared as King Ohm appeared in golden armor, imposing and regal, radiating the unassailable power of the Sea King. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! The people cried, and Ohm greeted them confidently, taking the adulation as a given. When Gao Li stepped forward, the crowd's cheers wavered, some angered that a land dweller challenged their king, others sympathetic because Gao Li had stood with the Justice League. The atmosphere was complicated. Ohm raised his voice. People of Atlantis, this guest claims to be a lost royal from ancient times. He also wants to contest me for an Atlantean relic. We will settle this the old way. Only blood reveals the god's will. The crowd erupted. Ohm turned to Gao Li with a smirk of disdain. You're not my match. Admit defeat. After all, your companions helped Atlantis. I don't want to make things ugly. Gao Li gave a dry laugh. So, having seen the Justice League's strength, why are you so sure you're stronger than me? Ohm shrugged. Everyone has their own specialty. Your companions' deeds show they're skilled in science and technology, so you must be the scientist among them. They left you in the rear and you didn't step forward. That proves you aren't a fighter. Gao Li shook his head. Wishful thinking, full of holes. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Better to let you experience it. The horn sounded. Water shimmered. Ohm struck first, lightning fast, thrusting his trident in a precise, concentrated strike. The trident carved an elegant arc through the water. Gao Li only chuckled, sidestepping. With a curl of his palm, he spun the surrounding sea into a transparent bubble that repelled Ohm's impact. My counter, he said, and concentrated seawater between his hands into a compressed ball of force, slamming it toward Ohm. The blast force staggered Ohm despite his guard. Murmurs ran through the crowd. He can control seawater. Could he be real royalty? Even among royals, few have that level of skill. Ohm's face darkened, his pride flexed, but so did surprise. He was used to being dominant, yet this challenger matched Mela-level control. He pressed forward, cutting through the water with his trident to close the gap, but Gao Li anticipated it. He shaped seawater into an impenetrable barrier, and, with surgical precision, peeled away small pockets to create air gaps. Those gaps prevented Ohm from using the water to boost his movements, drastically reducing his speed. Ohm's attacks became a blur of trident strikes and whirlpools. The glassy bubbles Gao Li created glittered in the water like traps. Gao Li moved like a man at home both in air and water, fast, strong, precise. The spells he layered enhanced his speed and strength so that every blow carried extra weight. Ohm began to show wear. Bruises appeared despite his armor. Arthur watched, exhilarated. Well fought. I didn't expect Gao Li to be this capable. He's giving my arrogant brother a real beating. Ohm's desperation mounted. He roared that he was the king of Atlantis, destined to be Ocean Lord, determined not to fail. His strikes became more furious, each meant to end the fight. For a moment it looked like he would break through. He gathered all the ocean's fury into a devastating full-power strike that shattered Gao Li's bubble. Water splashed everywhere, and Ohm surged forward on that explosive energy. But Gao Li had anticipated the charge. At the exact instant Ohm launched his full attack, Gao Li vibrated the water with both palms and formed a giant bubble of air. Ohm, suddenly in an air pocket, was forced to slow, dropped from his water-supported buoyancy, and choked seawater from his lungs. Gao Li stepped forward with mocking calm. Heh, well met. He pressed the advantage, attacking faster than before. The battle had taken a turn. Gao Li was dictating the environment, and Ohm's every move forced him to adapt to sudden shifts between water and air. Ohm's heart skipped. He felt the change, and a chilling thought rose undeterred. He's getting serious. 191, Section 191. Section 191. Ohm realized he needed new tactics to beat Gao Li. He was at a clear disadvantage. With a splash, he dove back into the water from the edge of the air bubble, gripping his trident and cutting through the sea, probing for an opening. But Gao Li seemed to anticipate every approach, meeting each of Ohm's feints with a perfect counter. The spectators felt their chests tighten beneath their breathing apparatuses. They were watching a duel far more spectacular than anyone had expected. Gao Li moved across the battlefield like a dancer, every dodge and riposte impossibly graceful. In comparison, Ohm's brutal assaults looked clumsy against Gao Li's effortless defense systems. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Am I the one who's gonna lose? Ohm cursed, sweat beading on his brow and immediately diluting in the seawater. As king of Atlantis, he could not accept defeat. Suddenly, Gao Li tightened his control of the water, shifting the environment back to a land-like state. Ohm couldn't adapt fast enough. The water trapped in his lungs made it hard to breathe, and without buoyancy, his movements faltered. Alarm flared across his face. Gao Li had seized his chance. Ocean shatter! Gao Li shouted, gathering the energy of his ultimate attack and punching Ohm square in the chest. The blow sent Ohm flying. Boom! Ohm tumbled through the air and crashed onto the seabed, shattering a large section of the Ring of Fire's foundation and nearly plunging into a pocket of undersea magma. Pain exploded from his chest. Blood leaked at the corner of his mouth. Still, he tried to sit up. I can fight again, he ground out. He didn't have the chance. Gao Li reached out and manipulated the water into a colossal dragon that lunged like a missile, an attack carrying power comparable to a rider kick. Ohm threw everything he had into blocking it, but the dragon's force was overwhelming. He was hurled again, harder this time, and this time he did not get back up. Normally, given Ohm and Arthur's comparable physiques, Ohm shouldn't have been felled so easily. But Gao Li's ultimate attacks were magic-enhanced, on par with the finishing moves of many Final Form Kamen Riders. The crowd exchanged stunned looks. Your Majesty's lost, someone whispered. The victor has been decided. So strong. The duel was over. The onlookers were amazed. Nobody had expected Gao Li to be so powerful. Gao Li allowed himself a small smile. As the winner, he didn't bother to wait for Ohm to recover. Ohm wasn't getting up anytime soon. Wakey was ecstatic. This public defeat solved his greatest fear. Ohm using his kingly powers to send forces after them. After being humiliated in front of Atlantis, if Ohm sent soldiers to chase them, he'd only invite scorn and lose the people's support. In truth, Wakey underestimated Gao Li's strength. His worries had been petty in comparison to what might happen if Ohm provoked Gao Li. Come on, Arthur. We're in a hurry, Gao Li called. Arthur swam over, face lit with excitement. For a beat, the crowd stared, then erupted into cheers. Victory deserved honor whether Gao Li was a surface dweller or not. Gao Li grinned at the applause, then turned to Arthur. By the way, do you know where the Lost World is? Arthur nodded. Wakey gave me the coordinates. I checked the world map. It's roughly in the western Sahara Desert. Gao Li glanced at the coordinates Arthur handed him, raised an index finger, and pointed toward the sky. Boom! A column of rainbow light descended through the water, piercing the surface and taking Gowli and Arthur away. Western Sahara. The Bifrost Bridge struck the sand like a flare, kicking up a cloud of dust. Gowli and a coughing Arthur stepped out of the light. Cough, cough. Your teleporting is flashy and convenient, but it's too showy. It kicks up way too much dust, Arthur grumbled. Gowli hadn't yet canceled his transformation, so he wasn't bothered by grit. It's an advantage, isn't it? He said, spreading his hands. I learned this because it looks cool. Arthur rolled his eyes. Once the dust settled, Gowli's trial card nearly expired, and his Water Rider armor dissolved in a flash of blue. Wakey's coordinates are wrong. There's nothing here. Where's the shadow of the lost world? Arthur complained, scratching his hair. Gowli released a sweep of magic and then pointed down. It's beneath our feet. Huh? Arthur stared. Before he could react, the desert trembled and a huge hole opened. He screamed and plunged as the ground gave way. Gowli simply created a staircase out of thin air and stepped down, while Arthur bounced along at the bottom, unhurt thanks to his thick skin, already exploring the underground chamber. Below ground rose tall, magnificent palaces, their surfaces caked in sand and dust. Arthur's eyes lit up. Gowli moved with purpose, and at the end of the main hall they found a circular disc. The grooves on this look like that scroll. Try inserting it, Gowli said. They placed the scroll in the disc. It slid in smoothly. For a moment nothing happened. Huh? Is it broken? Gowli tapped the disc. Arthur shrugged. No surprise. It's been buried in a desert. Of course it's gotten dusty and stopped working. Gowli stroked his chin. You can't understand mythic technology with common sense, but that gives me an idea. For something from Atlantis, water should do the trick. He raised his hand and summoned a stream of water onto the device. Immediately the disc shuddered and clicked, starting to rotate. It projected an image of the king of Atlantis, who gave brief guidance and then revealed coordinates for the next location. Sicily, Italy, the projection announced. Arthur peered at the map. Gowli felt a little silly. Everything about this felt like a real-life exploration game. Fine, he said, let's go. He struck his kingly pose again, pointed skyward, and the Bifrost descended to take them. In Sicily, the game feeling only intensified. After some searching, Gowli and Arthur placed the bottle they carried into the hand of a statue, and at last the disc revealed the location of Poseidon's trident, as the king of Atlantis had indicated. I think Wake mentioned this place. It's in the territory of the Hygo tribe kingdom, Arthur said, then paused. The Hygo tribe, do you know what they are? They're one of the 7 kingdoms that split from Atlantis. Because we're descendants of the sea god, we originally could breathe underwater, Arthur explained. After Atlantis sank, some survived, but living on the seafloor for generations changes you. Some descendants evolved to resemble humans, others didn't. The Hygo tribe, they've become wild fishmen. They're basically feral, Arthur continued. Brutal, bloodthirsty, irrational, very dangerous. Interesting, Gowli murmured. Let's go see. He clapped his hands, and a pillar of colored light whisked them almost instantly to the Hygo tribe kingdom. Thanks to Gowli's Bifrost Bridge, the whole trip to retrieve the trident had taken them less than an hour. Gowli, any plan? Are we just going to enter Hygo territory and hope for the best? Arthur shouted as they free fell through the water. Gowli thought for a moment. Do the Hygo tribe have any weaknesses? If not, and they try to stop us, I'll have to fight my way through. They live in the lightless deep sea. They fear light. Do you have a flashbang? Arthur called. No, Gowli said, slipping on his lost driver. But when it comes to shining and glitter, nobody's better than me. Transform! Glitter! Gowli shifted into his glitter form and flooded the surrounding water with blinding light, like a massive underwater flashbang. Arthur, dazzled and unable to open his eyes, trailed by feeling the water currents. As they advanced, countless blood-red eyes glowed in the distance. The fishmen stared, but did not approach. They were terrified of the light. The sheer number of them made Gowli tense. Even if they were frightened, he wouldn't be able to guarantee Arthur's safety unless he eliminated the encircling threat. If possible, he preferred to avoid killing, but with so many of them, that might be unavoidable. Look, an underwater storm. Let's check it out, Gowli said, noticing a gigantic current tornado flashing with electric light in the distance. Arthur, still blinded by the glittering glow, agreed and they swam toward it. Once they entered, the current spun them dizzyingly down into deeper waters. When the chaos subsided, they surfaced in a different place. Huh? Where are we? This isn't where we started, Arthur said as Gao Li shut off his glitter form and Arthur finally opened his eyes. There were no Hygo tribe present. Arthur looked around. From when they'd first arrived, the Bifrost had teleported them high above. The view from the sky had been one thing. This place was different. For one, there was a small island nearby with a forested top and something odd above it. Gao Li pointed upward. You don't hear about pterosaurs surviving on the surface, do you? Arthur froze. Following Gao Li's gesture, he saw dozens of pterosaurs soaring over the little island. Section 92. Oh my God, it's a living dinosaur! Arthur cried in awe. Gao Li's guess had been right. They had arrived at the dark sea at the Earth's core, the underworld. After taking in the sight, the two of them landed on a small island. From a distance, they saw a strange figure approaching, dressed like a member of the Hygo tribe. Be careful, it might be a local, Arthur warned, staying on guard until the stranger pulled back his hood. The face looked older, but it matched the photographs Arthur had seen at home. You are? Arthur stared, stunned. Mother? Eh? Atlanta, too, was for a moment speechless. Then recognition flared across her face, followed by surprise and joy. Atlanta, the former Queen of Atlantis, banished here because she had Arthur with his father, had stubbornly survived on her own for 20 years. The mother and son embraced, and after a long, tearful reunion, they began to talk seriously. Mother, why didn't you come back all these years? Arthur asked. I wanted to, but I couldn't, Atlanta sighed. To return to the surface from the dark sea, you need the Trident of Poseidon. Arthur's eyes widened. The Trident of Poseidon is really hidden here? Atlanta nodded. Yes, but the Trident is guarded by Cassandra. I've tried many times and I couldn't succeed. It's simply too powerful. Gao Li, curious, asked, What is Cassandra? Atlanta smiled kindly at him. Are you Arthur's friend? Cassandra is a giant sea beast. It's said its power is so great, even the king of Atlantis has retreated before it. Arthur rubbed his head. So Cassandra really exists. I thought it was just a legend, and the Trident too, until now. Cassandra will only allow the true king to pass and take the Trident, Atlanta explained. I think that should be you, my child. Should I try then? Arthur sounded uncertain. Gao Li patted his shoulder. Don't be afraid. I'll go with you. Time's tight. The sooner we get the Trident, the better. There was another reason Gao Li agreed. Blazar, who shared his body, had grown excited at the prospect of facing a great monster and kept whispering in his mind. A great enemy, perfect for Blazar. Atlanta cut in, shaking her head. That probably won't matter. Cassandra judges qualification, not numbers. Its strength is beyond your imagination. Mother, don't worry, Arthur said. Gao Li just recently defeated Ohm, the current king of Atlantis. Maybe he has a king's qualification. Ohm was defeated by him? Atlanta's expression grew complicated. Ohm had been her other child, but she didn't stop them. She led them to the waterfall at the island's core. The Trident's location was behind the falls at the bottom of the sea. Gao Li cast a wind spell to create an oxygen bubble around them. It wasn't reliable in battle, but it was fine for diving. They passed through the waterfall and plunged into the water. Soon they saw the corpse of the king of Atlantis, clutching the trident and seated on a distant throne. I'll go first, Arthur said and swam toward the throne. He had only gone halfway when a massive tentacle burst out of the water and slammed him away. You don't belong here. Since I began guarding the trident, I have repelled false kings. For 1,000 years, I have seen the greatest warriors try and fail, but I have never sensed anyone as unqualified as you. Cassandra roared as it revealed itself. Only Arthur could understand the beast's words. To Gao Li, it was simply a massive sea monster thrashing and roaring. You, a half-blood, dare to come for Atlantis' greatest treasure. Desecration! Cassandra spat. Arthur, unable to stand being insulted, yelled back and charged. The result was brutal. Cassandra tossed Arthur like a ball, flinging him through ruined columns and debris. Watching Arthur nearly beaten to death, Gao Li sighed. Fine, I'll handle this. The Blazar bracelet flashed onto Gao Li's wrist. He'd promised Blazar he'd let him appear if there was a chance like this. The blazer sparkle became a ray of light that slid into his palm, then into the bracelet. The crystal unfolded and lit with red and blue patterns. Gao Li pressed the bracelet. "Blazar!" he cried. Red and blue light flooded the sea. In Arthur's astonished eyes, Gao Li transformed into a giant of light, Blazar Ultraman. Towering 47 meters and weighing 42,000 tons, Blazar's body was streaked with red and blue, veins of light winding around the circular color timer on his chest. His eyes were deep-sea blue crystals, especially prominent on the left. Opposite him, Karsanra was about the same size, its body armored in hard scales and radiating a cold, dangerous aura. The Ocean Overlord had never met a rival like this, and for a moment was thrown off balance. "What in the world? A giant!" Gao Li heard Blazar mutter in his mind, excited. Blazar launched the first attack. He stretched out and fired 2 spiraling light bullets. Under the waves, they looked like meteors, streaks of blinding light that warped the currents. The bullets struck Karsanra's skin, throwing the beast several meters backward. "This guy's strong," Gao Li thought as Karsanra recovered and surged forward. The beast's mass drove a tidal surge behind it. Blazar condensed photon energy into his right hand and formed a spiral light spear to brace the impact. Karsanra opened its cavernous mouth, revealing razor teeth, and shook its head, knocking the spear aside before rushing in. Blazar dodged with lightning speed and swung his arm. Energy coalesced into what looked like a miniature black hole in his palm before resolving into a spiral light spear that cut a brilliant arc through the water toward Karsanra's vital spot. The spear slammed into the scales with a deafening clang, flinging Karsanra into a ruined stone pillar. Seawater exploded in a tidal spray and debris filled the ruins. Gao Li realized the spear had only grazed. It hadn't fully pierced the beast's defenses. Blazar hovered above Karsanra, watching as the Sea Lord struggled to rise, eyes burning with anger. Karsanra opened its maw and unleashed a freezing current. Blazar, unflinching, formed a massive spiral shield that held firm against the cold. The collision chilled the surrounding water and briefly froze the scene into a strange tableau. The stalemate didn't last. Karsanra closed the distance and tangled with Blazar. Their titanic lock sent waves crashing and set off undersea thunderclaps that shook the ruins. Other creatures fled, giving the two behemoths space. Pressure and fury weighed on Karsanra as it realized it was being pushed into a disadvantage. It roared and decided to go all out. "Be careful!" Arthur shouted when he saw Karsanra's intention, but Gao Li and Blazar were ready. As Karsanra charged at full speed, Blazar dodged and detonated his energy. Gao Li and Blazar moved as one. White light flared, red and blue strips shimmered over his body, and Blazar unleashed his finishing move. Spiral Requiem, a condensed spiral light spear shot from his hand. For a moment, the deep sea seemed to freeze. The spear struck with an earth-shattering boom. Light and armor collided, then the spiral Requiem smashed through Karsanra's scales with overwhelming force. Karsanra screamed as its massive body collapsed. In an instant, its form dissolved into nothingness, scattering into the seawater. The ocean calmed. The ruins sank back into darkness, only the ripples of the battle remaining. Blazar dissipated into countless motes of light and returned to Gao Li. "That takes care of Karsanra," Gao Li said. "Time to see if the Trident of Poseidon is real." He and Arthur swam to the fallen king of Atlantis. The trident still pulsed with golden light after all these years. Arthur stepped aside. "You get it. You defeated Karsanra," he said. Gao Li smiled. "I don't usually use tridents. In the end, it should go to you. Divine artifacts are precious to many, but they don't appeal to me," he added. "I'm already stronger than what they symbolize. This trident won't boost me much." Arthur finally relented. "Thank you, Gao Li." He reached out and grasped the Trident of Poseidon. Immediately, his eyes lit with a golden glow. A surge of power flowed through him, not simply an infusion of energy, but the awakening of something inside. For a moment, Arthur felt connected to every marine creature, the currents and life of the sea answering to him, as if the trident had reawakened his true potential. Arthur had been able to communicate with marine creatures since childhood, an ability no other Atlantean shared. His true nature, however, went much deeper. He was the living force housed within Poseidon's trident. The life force was one of the 7 creative forces in the universe. Originally, Poseidon himself had not possessed such a force. he had only been a sea god. Rumor had it that later, as life arose wherever there were oceans, and thus sea gods, Poseidon had cunningly tricked nearly all the other sea gods across the cosmos and eventually claimed the life force for himself. Such a unique energy. Arthur, would you be willing to help me study it later? Gowli asked. As a near supreme being, Gowli could sense the presence and significance of that power. Of course. No problem. This is the weapon you helped me get, after all, Arthur said with a laugh. Happy to oblige. Gowli nodded. All right, let's go back to land first. I wonder how Superman and Batman are doing with the mother box. Even though the race against Steppenwolf and the mother boxes was urgent, Gowli and Arthur couldn't simply leave at once. They returned to the small island to pick up Atlanta. Once everyone left the inner world and Atlanta was safe, Gowli connected to the Zia satellite to check the Justice League's location. A shimmering, colorful Bifrost bridge then descended from the sky and teleported Gowli and Arthur straight to them. How are things? They asked as they arrived. Bruce cut to the chase. We've had multiple kidnappings of S-Star Labs personnel. Eyewitnesses described the abductors as looking very much like parademons. S-Star Labs? Gowli remembered the intel. The lab run by that young man nicknamed... It's the lab my father runs, Victor interrupted. The cybernetic young man with the half-mechanical body was Victor Stone. Cyborg. My father, Silas Stone, is the director of S-Star Labs. Victor's presence confirmed the worst. S-Star Labs members, including Victor's father, had been taken. Clark offered a hypothesis. Could S-Star Labs be researching the mother boxes secretly? That would explain why parademons are kidnapping their people, to force them to reveal locations. Victor nodded. This body was created by a mother box. I didn't know what it was called back then, but it's how I became what I am. Have you found where they're taking them? Gowli asked. Bruce answered in a low voice. Gotham Harbor. We just got the tip from Gordon. Diana tightened her grip on her sword. Then what are we waiting for? Let's move and take them by surprise. Gowli hesitated, smiling wryly. You handle the minions and the rescues. I have a friend who's eager to help repel the alien threat. Barry perked up. What friend? Is it a new Justice League recruit? Gowli nodded toward Victor. He's the one joining the League. My friend and I aren't joining the League ourselves. You'll see soon enough. The League members exchanged puzzled looks, but trusted Gowli and fell into formation under Batman's command. Arthur, though thoughtful, probably already guessed who Gowli meant, the Giant of Light. So Gowli's friend was something with its own will and form. As a native of Gotham, I know the harbor, Gowli said, snapping his fingers to activate the Bifrost Bridge. In an instant, they were at Gotham Harbor. Deep in the harbor, Steppenwolf loomed like a shadow. His stare was cold and sharp. The captured S-Star Labs members trembled before him. He leaned close to one of them until his nose nearly touched the man's face. Tell me, he rumbled, voice like a blade, where is the mother box? The scientist tried to steady himself. I don't know. Steppenwolf's eyes narrowed. A contemptuous sneer creased his face. Do you think I'll believe that? You reek of the mother box. He waved his hand, and Parademon stepped forward with apocalyptian tools of torment. The lab man begged, but they began to use the devices. His screams echoed across the empty harbor, while Steppenwolf watched coldly. Think carefully, he hissed. I will make you tell me. The man's resistance slowly dissolved under the torture. Then, outside the harbor, a column of 7-colored lights suddenly appeared, an immense pillar connecting earth and sky. An interfering fellow has appeared? Steppenwolf snarled. A towering figure, nearly 50 meters tall and bathed in brilliant red and blue light, materialized and seized him. The Justice League all stared. Gowli had turned into a giant. It was unlike any power the League had seen. Clark and the others were stunned. Even Batman found his composure fastest and began assigning tasks. Clark, Barry, you two are the fastest. Clear the parademons away from the hostages. Victor and I will get the hostages to safety. Diana and Arthur, take care of any stragglers. Without waiting for orders, the team sprang into action. For most of the parademons and the rescue, the League was more than sufficient. The real problem was Steppenwolf, who in a one-on-one could overpower most members. Only Superman was clearly stronger. But now Steppenwolf faced Gowli's giant. No matter who you are, If you interfere with Apocalypse's business, you will regret it. Steppenwolf roared. He'd fought giants before and killed many, so he felt no fear. Then Blazar Ultraman struck, sending Steppenwolf crashing into the ground with the force of an earthquake. The villain struggled to rise, jammed with blood at the corner of his mouth, but Blazar's fist, and then a flurry of crushing blows, drove him down. Dust rose in great clouds as Steppenwolf's armor began to shatter under the assault. Barry and Victor watched in awe. Victor, after rescuing his father, relaxed but couldn't hide his shock at how powerful Gao Li's friend was. Even Clark, clearing the remaining enemies, felt a twinge of pity for Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf, summoning all his strength, lifted himself and prepared to counter when Blazar's hand shimmered. A spiral of light condensed into a spear in his palm, Spiral Nocturne. Before Steppenwolf could react, the massive light spear descended and pierced him. The spear was so large that most of Steppenwolf's body was instantly vaporized. A titanic explosion shot into the sky, and the once terrifying warlord who had ravaged Paradise and Atlantis was obliterated in moments. As the dust settled, the red light on Blazar Ultraman's chest began to pulse rapidly. Fighting Carcinra and then Steppenwolf in quick succession, using several energy-intensive finishing moves, had drained him. Satisfied with the victory, Blazar's form dissipated into points of light and returned to Gao Li. The remaining Paradmans were soon cleared out by the League. The battle ended in a decisive victory. The team regrouped. Diana filled Victor in on Apocalypse and the mother boxes since he had been unaware of the full picture. After hearing everything, Victor said, "I've already scanned and located 2 mother boxes. We should secure them in separate places so this doesn't happen again." Everyone agreed. Barry suggested, "Keep one with Mr. Wayne. He's strong enough to protect it." Gao Li nodded. "That works. I'll take one to study." Diana added, "Give the other to Superman. He's the strongest. It would be safer with him." Their experiences on Paradise Island and in Atlantis had taught them a harsh lesson. When an enemy has absolute destructive quality, sheer numbers don't guarantee safety. Putting the mother boxes back in Paradise Island or Atlantis could invite the same disaster again. Arthur asked, "You said there were 3 mother boxes. What about the last one?" "Let's keep it hidden for now," Victor replied. "Steppenwolf found the first 2 easily, but he hasn't located the third. Its secrecy is still intact." The STR Labs members had not broken under apocalyptian torture, not because they possessed superhuman willpower, but simply because they genuinely didn't know anything more to give. They didn't know where the mother box was. As a top secret at STAR Labs, only Dr. Stone, the director, knew its location. "All right," Bruce said, "just don't keep all the mother boxes in one place. A single box isn't terribly potent, but clustering them would be dangerous." The discussion ended there. The bigger problem Diana had warned about remained. "Apocalypse," she said, voice low. "Steppenwolf was only the vanguard. Darkseid will not stop. He'll come for Earth next." Bruce rubbed his chin. "So the main issue is preparing for an invasion from Apocalypse. Is there a good defense?" Gao Li answered, "I'll keep Satellite Zaya on constant watch. I'll also build another Arc-style satellite. Between the two, we can surveil outer space worldwide." Bruce's face brightened. "Then we should build a space station for the Justice League. Call it a watchtower. It would monitor space threats and give us early warning. When there aren't alien threats, it can still help detect disasters on Earth and dispatch heroes quickly." Everyone agreed. Wayne Group and Fadian Group would jointly fund and supply technical support. They would prepare for an apocalypse threat without letting life stop. No one knew when Darkseid might arrive. Gao Li relaxed into his work, dedicating himself to research. His most urgent task was studying the life force Arthur had provided, a power that connected different life forms. He coined the term carefully, more than a name, a happy accident that hinted at deeper properties. As always, Gao Li couldn't resist trying to formalize concepts, extracting them into discrete memory units for analysis. While Gao Li worked, another incident occurred. Test pilot Harold Hal Jordan encountered a crashed alien ship in the wilderness. Inside lay a red-skinned, battered alien, Abin Sur of the Green Lantern Corps, spitting blood. "Parallax. The seal has broken." Abin Sur rasped. "He's come." When Hal approached, the lantern, using his last strength, seized Hal's hand. "Listen, I'm dying. You have to breathe." Stay with me. Hal, familiar enough with recent crises to accept the existence of aliens without collapsing, fumbled for words. No, you're the one who needs help. Abin Sur stripped the ring from his finger and placed it in Hal's hand. The ring brought me here. It chose you. Put it on. Recite the oath. This is honor and responsibility. Hal had no context for rings and oaths. He stared at the green band in his palm and at the accompanying lantern core inside the crashed ship. Before he could ask more, Abin Sur slumped and died. Hal took the ring and lantern core home. He didn't want to involve authorities, better to avoid interrogations by unknown agencies. Meanwhile, satellite Zaya had already detected the crash and sent a monitoring report to the Justice League. Bruce was on duty and headed to the scene, but he arrived too late. Hal had already activated the ring. Back at his place, curious about the oath Abin Sur had mentioned, Hal experimented. He tried several phrases, then idly touched the lantern core while holding the ring. A surge of green light flooded his mind. The oath streamed into him, in brightest day, in blackest night, and he spoke it aloud. A synthesized voice answered the ring. Intelligent lifeform locked. Harold Hal Jordan of Earth. You possess the will to overcome fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. Before Hal could process it, a column of emerald light enveloped him and dragged him into the sky. He screamed as it tore through the atmosphere and opened a wormhole. Bruce, watching from nearby, saw the green light explode upward like a reversed meteor. That target looks like Hal Jordan, Zaya reported. Bruce asked the satellite to track it. Zaya replied that the object had opened a wormhole after breaking the atmosphere and disappeared. Even Zaya couldn't follow across such distances. Bruce sighed. We can't follow. File a report and send a copy to Gao Li. Okay. Gao Li was not a daily member of the League's operations, but his role was indispensable when problems exceeded typical solutions. He was their unofficial ace, called in for crises beyond the League's expertise. When Zaya's report arrived, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Gao Li frowned. The name meant little to him, a vague echo. In his previous life, he had some knowledge of a Green Lantern in old films, but not the specifics. He had not included Hal on any roster of potential recruits because, before receiving the ring, Hal had no powers to detect. Gao Li wasn't worried. Green Lanterns were generally righteous. Besides, new Corps members tended to return to Earth eventually. His curiosity mattered more than paperwork. After Hal completed basic training on Oa, he did indeed return. Gao Li went to meet him personally. He wanted to study Green Lantern energy and the ring. When Gao Li knocked, Hal opened the door, rumpled and unshaven. Gao Li introduced himself with a business card. Gao Li Wayne, I'm a major shareholder of Wayne Group. Hal squinted at the card. Gao Li kept a low profile compared to the famous Bruce Wayne, but the resemblance made the claim believable. The Wayne family? Hal asked at last. All right, what can I do for you? You're the new bearer of a Green Lantern ring, yes? Gao Li asked. Would you be interested in joining the Justice League? If not, would you lend me the ring and lantern core for study? Hal bristled. How do you know about the Green Lantern Corps? Gao Li smiled faintly. The world contains many secrets. Hal hesitated, then said, No, I don't want to be studied. The ring is mine. Gao Li pulled out a check. 100 million US dollars. Borrow everything you have related to the Corps for 1 month. 100 million? Hal's jaw dropped. He had never seen that kind of money. Despite his instincts, the offer was irresistible. Just 1 month? You sure? It's alien technology. I could ask for more time. 50% discount. Hal joked, still stunned. 1 month is enough, Gao Li said calmly. He meant it. Gao Li had confidence born of experience. Hal laughed, then agreed. He fetched the ring and lantern core and handed them over. Gao Li took them, but a small unease tugged at him. Hal had been swayed so easily by money, his will seemed weaker than the Kents who had once refused offers. How had the ring chosen a man so prone to temptation? Before leaving, Gao Li asked once more, Have you thought about joining the Justice League? We have heroes like Superman and Batman. I'm not a superhero, Hal said. I'm not a Green Lantern anymore. Gao Li stared. After such a short time, Hal shrugged and refused further discussion. Gao Li didn't press him. He returned to the lab with the ring and lantern core. Hal had indeed been unsettled by his time on Oa. He'd been repeatedly humiliated by Sinestro, then the Corps' top lantern, and left training early. His potential was evident, but his will was not yet fully tempered. In the lab, Gowley shifted his schedule and focused on Green Lantern energy. His recent work on the life force Arthur supplied was nearly complete, so he could spare the resources. Gowley had experience with high-level powers, speed force, the creation force, primordial energies, infinite magic. Those analyses had taught him how to accelerate understanding of similar systems. If he couldn't decode Green Lantern energy quickly now, he doubted he ever could. Progress came fast. The more he dissected the ring's constructs and the emotional spectrum it drew from, the more unsettled Gowley became. Many aspects of Green Lantern energy looked eerily similar to infinite magic, magic born from overcoming despair into hope. Infinite magic contained both despair and hope. The emotional spectrum mapped emotional states, and both the Sorcerer's Ring and the Lantern Ring were rings. The parallels were too tight to be coincidence. A bold idea formed. If the emotional spectrum shared structure with infinite magic, perhaps he could bridge the two, master the emotional spectrum through night magic. Gowley plunged into that new line of research with everything he had. A month passed quickly. Earth was relatively calm under the League's protection, but events elsewhere in the universe were stirring. Section 195. The most important development was that, after Oa discovered Parallax had broken its seal and been reborn, Sinestro personally led the Green Lantern Corps' finest to intercept it. Parallax embodied Yellow Lantern energy, the power of fear, and it was the natural nemesis of Green Lanterns. The result was predictable. Aside from Sinestro, who escaped by the skin of his teeth, virtually every elite lantern sent against Parallax was annihilated. But Parallax's influence did not stop at Oa. Earth began to suffer a chain reaction. When Parallax had first returned to full power, it hunted down Abin Sur and murdered him, secretly embedding a fragment of itself inside the dying lantern. After Abin Sur's body was taken to Earth and dissected by the U.S. government, that fragment managed to parasitize the lead doctor. As the parasite strengthened, Parallax, across light years, sensed Earth and opened a Yellow Lantern wormhole to arrive here. So many intelligent beings, so much fresh fear. This place is a perfect feast, Parallax purred as it probed the planet. The fear it sensed from humans was richer than most the entity had tasted. The planet promised an orgy of terror. In the weeks since its rebirth, Parallax had already devoured several civilizations, but none seemed as delectable as this one. Then it saw two figures in the black. Superman and Cyborg had flown into space to intercept it. Clark Kent and Victor Stone floated side by side, staring at the shifting nightmare that was Parallax. The creature's form was a constantly distorting gaseous horror, an opponent unlike any either of them had faced before. "We're the ones with the best space combat capability in the League," Clark said quietly to the new Justice League member. "So we'll take point. Hope you don't mind." "It's fine," Victor replied. "I hope we can stop it up here." "Good. Let's go." Clark launched himself forward, muscles like forged steel, channeling the solar energy inside him. His fist hit Parallax with breathtaking force. For a moment, Parallax recoiled. This was the first time it had encountered such raw physical power, but the gaseous entity merely flowed around the blow and closed the gap as if nothing had happened. Clark blinked in surprise, then kept attacking with Victor at his side. But each strike left them more unnerved. The creature simply reformed, healed, or allowed blows to pass through hollow sections of its body. It was increasingly clear to Clark that straightforward physical force would not prevail. If it's a gaseous form, he thought, then try freezing it. "Get ready, Victor," Clark said. "Once I freeze it, you hit it and shatter it." "Got it." Clark exhaled a blast of freezing breath toward the constantly shifting mass, but the cold passed through a suddenly hollowed section. Parallax dimmed its glow and slipped by, then expanded into a black mist and poured over both heroes. "Ha! You two were so bold to touch me directly, perfect for me to plant seeds of fear." Without warning, Parallax began seeding fear, tugging Clark and Victor toward the abyss. "It's attacking our minds," Victor warned, his voice betraying tension. "Stay calm." "I'm trying." Clark forced himself to think clearly. But Parallax's influence was immediate and ravenous. Images of a destroyed Earth, of people suffering because they failed, of their own helplessness flooded Clark and Victor. Fear gutted their resolve and bled their strength. Their bodies grew heavy. Their will faltered. "No!" Clark cried. "No!" Victor screamed. Defeated in thought, they began to fall back toward Earth, weakened and helpless. On the planet below, the city glittered in the night, unaware that that fragile calm was about to shatter. Diana, Bruce, Arthur, and Barry, Wonder Woman, Batman, Aquaman, and the Flash, had already been alerted by Zia satellite and stood ready. They formed the second line of defense, determined to stop the invasion. "We have to find a way to stop it," Bruce said, steady and firm as ever. "From Clark and Victor's comms, it seems the enemy weaponizes fear. We need to be on guard." Diana tightened her grip on her sword. "My power comes from love and courage. I will not be controlled by fear." Arthur nodded. "I don't know fear. I'll use the ocean's power to resist this evil." Barry hesitated. He looked to the others, then said, "Should we call Mr. Wayne?" Bruce's reply was blunt. "Gao Li didn't join the Justice League. We are the League. You, Diana, Arthur, Barry. We carry the responsibility of protecting Earth." "If we keep asking Gao Li to solve every problem, what's the point of the League?" Diana added. "We must learn and grow by facing threats ourselves." Barry scratched his head. "I guess that makes sense. If Mr. Wayne always handles everything, we'd be useless." Arthur looked confused. "Gao Li is very powerful, but do you talk like he solves every problem? Can he really handle everything?" While they argued, Parallax drew close to the surface. Its gaseous body streamed through the atmosphere and struck the ground from multiple directions. "We can't let it succeed," Bruce ordered. They scattered. Barry blurred through the city, trying to use his speed to gain an edge. He whipped up a storm of Speed Force energy, hoping to sweep Parallax up in it, but the entity dispersed like smoke and slipped through his vortex. The failed attempt left Barry with a creeping, unexpected anxiety. "Why am I getting so easily discouraged?" he wondered, a first taste of that seed of fear. Parallax's power was more than physical. It attached to the spirit itself. Arthur and Diana alternated offense and defense, Arthur's trident driving surges of seawater, and Diana using her shield, bracelets, and lasso to hold the line. Bruce fought like the strategist he was. His whole life had been a study of fear. He had terrorized the criminals of Gotham by wielding fear as a tool, and that discipline made him unusually resistant to Parallax's assaults. For a while, he held firm where others felt their resolve slipping. But Parallax's attacks were nearly all mental. It could spread like mist and seemed to have billions of potential forms. Even the four heroes could not finish it off. The creeping dread took hold. Diana, who relied on love and courage, felt her strength ebb under the attack. Arthur's will faltered, the seawater barriers beginning to crack. Barry found that motion could not outrun a shadow that clung to the mind. Even Bruce, the man who had mastered fear itself, felt despair gnawing at the edges of his control. They were still fighting, still buying time, but the yellow energy of Parallax felt like a dark vortex swallowing them. From Parallax's perspective, this resistance was unexpected. It had torn through many Green Lanterns. Few lasted this long. Seeing these four still defiant reminded it of the pair it had just met in space, especially the man in blue and red. Had it not embedded a seed in that Superman, and had it not expended so much energy, perhaps the Kryptonian would have held fast like these others. Never mind, Parallax thought. They're almost broken. Victory is close. While the Justice League clung to the front, two people sat in Hal Jordan's living room. One was Hal. The other was Gao Li, who had come to return a lantern ring and core. They were both staring at the window and at Hal's phone, which had just pinged with a message from the Zia satellite. "What are the odds?" Hal muttered. Gao Li frowned, glancing at the message. "Perfect timing. Just finished learning about Green Lantern energy, and an enemy from space shows up on our doorstep, and it looks like it uses the same energy." After thoroughly researching and analyzing Green Lantern energy, Gao Li upgraded Zia's ability to detect emotional spectrum wavelengths. That enhancement let him perceive Parallax's essence. "The same energy?" Hal muttered. "Could this be the Parallax Abin Sur spoke of?" "Most likely," Gao Li said. Gao Li stood, smoothed his clothes, and looked Hal over. "From what I see, you and Parallax have some connection. This seems like the Green Lantern Corps' responsibility, right? So after a month of living it up on the money I gave you, have you made up your mind? Will you take the ring and fight?" Hal laughed. After getting used to a rich lifestyle, I'm even less inclined to risk my life now. And judging by you, aren't you the one planning to handle Parallax? I don't know what powers you think I have, Gowley replied, but you sound confident. Between you and the Justice League, I'll leave it to you. Gowley shook his head. He wasn't sure whether giving Hal $100 million had been a mistake. The money had only indulged Hal's worst inclinations. Gowley found it strange. Hal's willpower read closer to that of an ordinary man, so why had the Green Lantern energy favored him? There wasn't time to puzzle over it. Hal, the more I study Green Lantern energy, the more I'm certain of one thing. Something about you attracted it, and that's why a ring chose you. I don't know what it is yet. I can't see it, but you should be able to. Don't be fooled by your own behavior. Look at yourself clearly. That's all I have to say. I must go. Gowley clenched his hand and summoned a verdant magic ring that materialized on his finger. Let me test this ability first. A green wormhole opened beneath him, and he stepped into it. Left alone in the living room, Hal's expression was far from relaxed. He had put on a brave face, but the month of excess had begun as pleasure and curdled into an emptiness he couldn't fill. Confident and flashy by nature, Hal found that riches and leisure did not silence the void. He had tried the world's most extreme entertainments. None quieted the restlessness. He stared at the lantern ring and the lantern core on the coffee table and felt he couldn't even understand himself anymore. Gowley's words echoed, "Don't be fooled by your own behavior. See yourself clearly." Hal's fists tightened involuntarily. I want to," he ground out, eyes flicking from the ring to the distant figure of Parallax. On the battlefield, the members of the Justice League were on their knees, gasping. Parallax's attacks were not conventionally devastating. There were few physical wounds among them, but at a non-physical level, he was stripping their resolve. Their bodies remained intact, but their minds were fraying. Parallax laughed, a sound like dry ice in a void. "The annoying ones are finally going to disappear. I'll feast." A green wormhole opened and a figure stepped through, radiating an icy presence that cut through the battlefield. "Gowley?" the League breathed, both relieved and embarrassed. Why did Gowley have to clean up this mess again? And what was this new power? Gowley held a gleaming green ring, a clear stream of light amid the darkness. Parallax's abyssal eyes widened, then narrowed in contempt. "Another Green Lantern? How many have I killed? They were entertainment once, but they fall so easily now." "So confident?" Gowley said, smiling. "Perfect. I like seeing confidence break." Parallax was enraged at being mocked. "You're asking for death," he roared. "I didn't come to die," Gowley replied, his smile cold. "I came to end your wickedness." Parallax laughed, scornful. "End me? With you? A lantern ring is scrap to me. You're a pathetic toy." Gowley listened, then closed his eyes and reached out with his perception of magic. He sensed the yellow energy radiating from Parallax and how the creature used words to sow fear. He felt Parallax's expectation that his yellow power would seize the heart and bend it to terror. Gowley's breath evened. He repeated a mantra inside himself, steadying his will. "I will not be swayed by fear. I must remain calm." He was calm because, in his mind, Parallax was already conquered. The attempt to intimidate him would be half as effective. Parallax was taken aback. No being should be immune to his influence. "No creature does not fear me," Parallax snarled. Gowley's smile widened. "Your words have become excessive. That surprise, that uncertainty, it's the beginning of fear. You've never met someone immune to your yellow energy, and you don't know how to process that." Willpower was one of the universe's strongest forces. Green Lanterns drew on will to push past fear, but Parallax had always assumed even will could be twisted by his power. Gowley's calm, his refusal to be moved, planted a tiny seed of doubt in Parallax. The yellow beast bristled. Could he, progenitor of fear itself, feel fear? The thought alone unsettled him. "Ridiculous. I fear nothing." "Words are useless in battle," Gowley said. "But they do have one effect. They stopped you from attacking for a moment. That's enough." Gowley's smile turned ominous. "Now, I'll conduct an experiment. Parallax, are you interested in becoming a phantom demon?" "Phantom demon? What are you talking about?" Parallax's voice wavered. A glow blinked at the edge of Gowley's pocket. He covered it and murmured as if speaking to someone. "I know this is a big monster and you deserve it, but this is my specialty." Let me handle it, Blazar. He slipped on the endless golden Yinglong ring. A pillar of light enveloped him. Transform, he commanded. Parallax stared as the man before him changed. The green-ringed figure was suddenly clad in armor, face hidden behind a mask, eye lights blazing like twin stars. For an instant, Parallax wondered if his opponent was anything but a Green Lantern. No fleeing, only coming at me? Commendable courage, Parallax sneered and lunged, his form twisting through the void as if to mock the tiny armored figure. Gao Li laughed softly and drew a sword of pure magical energy that flashed like a blade of sunlight. Try this first. He swung. A scorching arc of energy sliced the air as if to cleave a city in two. Parallax dispersed, his body dissolving into gaseous shadow, and the blade cut nothing but empty space, flying up and vanishing. Parallax reformed into a massive shadow monster and charged. From the League's perspective, Gao Li seemed to be standing exposed, deep in thought, as Parallax bore down on him. A shout of alarm rose. "Look out!" followed by a faint, bell-like sound. The vision warped. Gao Li had activated the power of creation. Instead of another weapon, Gao Li produced a massive physical shield that glowed softly and wrapped around him. Parallax crashed into it with an earth-shaking roar. The impact sent Parallax flying backward. He blinked as if the material of the shield didn't make sense. "What kind of material is that?" Gao Li shrugged. "I don't know. I created it on the fly today. It doesn't have a name yet." Parallax snorted, clearly not buying Gao Li's words. Even constructs made from Green Lantern energy were temporary and entirely green. How could this be real? Temporary construct? Ridiculous. Parallax's form shimmered, then dissolved into an invisible gas that rushed at Gao Li. "Let's see how elemental effects handle this," Gao Li said. His eyes flashed, and an even more ornate magic sword appeared in his hand to meet the assault. Sword energy and gas collided with thunderous force. The battlefield became a blur of light and vapor. Gao Li's movements were fluid and relentless. His swordplay flowed like water, neutralizing Parallax's attacks effortlessly. One moment his figure flickered like a ghost, the next he moved with the speed of a stream, driving Parallax backward step by step. Parallax was stunned. He had never been overwhelmed like this, not even by history's greatest Green Lanterns. What terrified him was the feeling that Gao Li wasn't even using his full strength. He seemed to be testing and toying with Parallax rather than pressing for a kill. "Are you kidding me? You're an intriguing opponent, but not strong enough. Crushing an ant without killing it requires finesse," Parallax sneered. Gao Li smiled, and the magic robe around him flared. The sword in his hand split the darkness like lightning and struck toward Parallax's core. A thunderstorm erupted inside the yellow entity. Parallax had been pressed back above the clouds and was reeling. It wasn't that Parallax lacked power. His specialty was psychic assault, an assault of emotion. Every clash with him was a battle of wills. Gao Li could feel Parallax probing his mind, but it did nothing. Not because Gao Li's will was indestructible. He wasn't even stronger-willed than Superman or Batman, but because the gulf in raw power made fear irrational. Gao Li simply could not convince himself to be afraid. "Time to finish this," he said. A transparent magical tower materialized beside Parallax, pulsing with strange energy. It felt like an extension of Gao Li's mind and resonated with Parallax's own power to an unexpected degree. Parallax's howl turned to dismay. "What is this? Is this emotional spectrum energy?" He'd never seen it act like this. "This guy looks like an emotional spectrum user, and not like one at the same time." "We'll restrain you first," Gao Li said. "A gaseous life form is dangerous if it disperses." He gestured. The tower rose and trapped Parallax within. Parallax screamed, but the prison held. The energy binding him felt more advanced than his yellow lantern power. An outrage. "I'll weaken you utterly, then force a phantom demon contract," Gao Li said. He formed a blazing orb of fire in his hand, like a miniature sun, and hurled it into the tower. The explosion was concentrated inside the cage. Parallax shrieked as his body was incinerated down to a tiny remnant. Gao Li reached into the connected wormhole and plucked out the last fragment of the entity. "That should do it," Gao Li said with a cold chuckle. "Whatever you were, you'll have no strength left to resist." Parallax, now reduced to the size of a head held in Gao Li's palm, howled and raged until he finally panicked. "What are you going to do to me?" He screamed. Gao Li looked him in the ethereal face. I'll use the commonality between infinite magic and the emotional spectrum as a bridge to bind you into an improved phantom demon contract. No need to explain. This is beyond you. The limitless golden Oryu style had already fully subdued Parallax. Don't let his tiny form fool you. As a yellow lantern creature, Parallax could regrow if fed fear again. For now, though, Gao Li had authority. He was Parallax's master. He used that authority to forcibly extract memories. Only Parallax's screams echoed across the sky. When Clark and Victor, just recovering on the ground, flew back to where Gao Li hovered, they found the bizarre tableau. Parallax the size of a head, trapped in Gao Li's hand, his anthropomorphic face utterly broken. "Mr. Wayne, is it over?" Clark asked, stunned. Gao Li nodded. "You could say that." Clark blamed himself. "We were careless and walked into a trap. We even made you come. We owe you." Victor looked sheepish. His debut with the Justice League had turned into a defeat. To break the awkwardness, he changed the subject. "What happened to this thing? Why does it look so messed up?" Gao Li replied, "I took coercive measures. I'm his master now, and I used that to dig through his memories." "You saw its memories?" Clark asked. "Yes. It's called Parallax, the lantern beast of yellow lantern energy." Gao Li casually tossed the small creature like a ball. "There are 6 other lantern beasts in the universe." 6 more? Clark and Victor both flinched. That sounded like 6 more massive problems. Gao Li raised a hand. "Relax. Parallax is especially chaotic and malicious because he's a yellow lantern beast. The other 6 correspond to the other emotional spectrums. For example, the green lantern spectrum represents will. Its corresponding lantern beast is neutral, even benevolent." That explanation eased some tension. When the 3 returned to the surface, Arthur and Barry, who had also barely escaped the fear's influence, rushed over and gathered around Parallax's tiny, Ahegao-like face. "Gao Li, why didn't you just kill it?" Arthur asked in awe. No wonder the League trusted Gao Li. He could turn the tide single-handedly. "Because it can still be useful," Gao Li said coolly. "With Parallax, I can channel Yellow Lantern energy directly, almost the primal form of it." He explained that the Green Lantern energy the League knew had been passed down through rings and corpses, often diluted. Harvesting energy directly from a lantern beast is like tapping a primal pool, closer to the source wall's creation force. Everyone nodded, half understanding the technicalities. The gist was clear. Gao Li had gained a powerful asset. Hal Jordan was still at home, Gao Li thought. Had he taken longer, Hal might have restored his will and become a Green Lantern again, perhaps even saving people. Maybe Hal's rebirth hadn't come yet. For Gao Li, Parallax's contract opened a new path. He planned to search the universe for the other lantern beasts and replicate the contract. Time was limited before he planned to jump to the Marvel universe, but he wanted to make the most of it. A short tour among the stars and seas. With the Bifrost and wormhole tech at his disposal, return trips were instantaneous. "Why leave Earth so suddenly?" Bruce asked inside Wayne Manor. He sounded surprised. "Xiao Guang will miss you, and so will we," Bruce added quietly. "I'm not staying away forever," Gao Li said. "If you miss me, I can come back immediately." Then he explained his purpose, to find other lantern beasts and try to replicate the Parallax contract. "If I meet non-hostile lantern beasts, I'll approach them respectfully and negotiate an equal contract." Bruce, who had read about the emotional spectrum, suddenly understood the scope. "You want to collect all the emotional spectrums." "Exactly," Gao Li said. "From my research on green and yellow energies, they can fuse." Bruce raised an eyebrow. "They're supposed to be opposites. They fuse?" Gao Li nodded. "Yes. If all 7 spectrums are gathered, they can combine into something greater. But it's difficult. To restore the primal creative force, I should get the lantern beasts themselves, not just energies passed down through rings. Otherwise, energies sourced differently would be mismatched. And the 7 beasts split up long ago. Parallax doesn't know where the others are. I'll have to search the universe, use instantaneous travel, and try to have Parallax sense the others or dig through planetary legends for traces. It would be a long, uncertain hunt. Luckily, Gao Li wasn't in a rush. He could take months, even up to a year. He set the deadline, 1 year, then he'd head to the Marvel universe. "Earth will be in your hands to protect. Take care," Bruce said. Gao Li opened a Yellow Lantern wormhole on the spot. "I'll be back in a year," he said, and stepped through. Time flew during his travels. Gao Li used the Bifrost, wormholes, and, when needed, transformed into Blazar Ultraman to sweep planetary surfaces. By the end of the year, he'd completed the initial task. He'd gathered as many clues and bits of information about the other lantern beasts as possible. "I've finished the initial reconnaissance," he said, satisfied as he organized the findings. "Next time I'll go to each location directly." He opened a wormhole and returned to Earth. The Justice League had proven itself capable in his absence. They'd grown. It made him think, children must leave home to grow up. The League had matured quickly, and Gao Li was pleased. Back at Fadian Group, Gao Li prepared for his planned jump to the Marvel Universe. This time, he didn't bring Xiaoguang. The prior experiment was successful, and Xiaoguang took up too much of his soul's capacity. Gao Li wondered if the limitless golden Oryu style's capacity had increased after mixing with the primal creation force. Fortunately, the emotional spectrum could be channeled into night magic rather than merged into the Oryu style, and after testing, Gao Li barely fit the full limitless golden Oryu style into his soul. Everything was ready. Gao Li set his course. Traversal, activate. Gao Li felt as if he had plunged into the deep sea, then broke the surface crossing the world barrier. He opened his eyes slowly. By now he was practiced at moving between universes. He didn't need time to adjust. He stood up and went straight to the laboratory to continue his projects. Life went on as usual. "Let me check the schedule. The 2-rider system is almost finished. Let's wrap this up first." He had checked Peter Parker's schedule. He wanted to know if Peter could help with the final push. Although Gao Li was Peter's employer, Peter was also family, and Gao Li respected his arrangements. "President Gao Li, you can just turn on the news," is said without leaving her place, connecting to the internet and replying in 3 seconds. Gao Li pulled up the live feed on his phone. Breaking news showed Spider-Man, already a familiar figure in New York, on camera, grappling with an enemy wearing enormous mechanical wings. As Gao Li expected, Peter was out there doing what he always did, throwing quips while fighting. "Once he's dealt with his opponent, tell him to come see me," Gao Li said. The winged man didn't seem especially powerful. Gao Li could have suppressed him with a thought, and with the tech Gao Li had put into Peter's suit, the vulture shouldn't have been a real challenge. "I've already sent him a message," Iz replied. A short while later, Peter contacted him, but the situation was not what Gao Li had imagined. Peter had been fighting the vulture on a busy street. His suit and gadgets made him more than a match for the villain, but Peter was young and inexperienced, and he tended to hold back against human foes. He also liked wisecracks in the middle of fights. Those things combined, and for a moment, he underestimated his opponent. The skirmish sent debris flying, and a passerby was hit. Peter realized with a sinking dread that the injured man was Ben Parker, Uncle Ben, lying in a pool of blood. Ben's eyes were closed, breath shallow, and he looked like he was dying. "No, no, no," Peter cried, stumbling to Ben's side. He knelt, clutched Ben's hand, his voice raw. "Uncle Ben, you can't be hurt. This is my fault." Ben's eyelids fluttered. His voice was barely audible. "Peter?" Tears streaked down Peter's face. "I'm so sorry I lied to you, Uncle Ben. I'll save you." He couldn't lift Ben for fear of making things worse. "Someone call an ambulance," Peter shouted to the arriving police. Then he remembered Gao Li. "Mr. Gao Li will know what to do." Peter connected to Gao Li and told him everything. Gao Li listened and then hesitated. He could use his biotech and cyborg surgery techniques to save someone in Ben's condition, nanobots, reconstructive procedures. But he also remembered what had happened with Tony. Meddling with a fixed point in time had triggered cascading reality effects, an absolute time point. The coincidence was too sharp. Gao Li couldn't ignore the possibility that Ben's death, as it related to Peter, might be an essential event for this universe and timeline. He had to prepare for both outcomes. Before heading to the scene, he grabbed a memory from the lab, then transformed en route with the lost driver. When he arrived, a distraught Peter at first didn't recognize him. Seeing the memory and the lost driver, Peter realized who had come and clutched Ben tighter. "Please save him," Peter begged. Gao Li nodded, produced a test tube, and placed it against the wound. Nanobots inside swarmed to work, stabilizing Ben's injuries the best they could. Within minutes, an ambulance thundered up. Paramedics loaded Ben onto a stretcher and sped him to the hospital. Peter followed. Gao Li did not board the ambulance. He retreated to a quiet corner, inserted the memory into the maximum drive slot, and activated it. Ether. Maximum drive. A blood-red light spilled outward, and the world seemed to twist. Gao Li watched the distant city and thought, I hope this will help integrate the absolute time point, change reality, fool the universe. The memory contained the power of the reality stone. Gao Li had extracted from the ether particle and sealed away. He was attempting to manipulate reality itself to reconcile the fixed event, that terrible, necessary knot in the timeline. Peter stood later on a rooftop, looking down at the city's lights and the river of traffic. Neon blinked and people moved like actors on a stage. It all felt dreamlike, real and unreal at once. In his head, Uncle Ben's voice echoed, warm and patient. With great power comes great responsibility, Peter. Remember that. For a moment, Peter imagined a return to simpler, kinder days, but reality hit back. He had been powerless to prevent Uncle Ben's final moments. He did not blame Gao Li. Peter knew Gao Li had worked as hard as he could. It was his mistake, his inexperience. The man who had loved him and taught him how to be decent was gone. The loss devastated Aunt May as well. Watching her cry crushed Peter. He'd rather have taken the blow himself than lose Ben. Ben's words looped in his mind. Peter closed his eyes, then opened them with a new clarity. He would carry this responsibility and never let someone be harmed because of him again. Days later, the red sun rose over New York. Peter stood before Ben's grave, staring at the stone and the small mound of earth. Sunlight filtered through leaves and fell like a quiet, sorrowful wash across the soil. He felt the weight of fate pressing on him. The ache in his chest seemed engraved there. "Uncle, I think I had a dream, like a truth and a lie mixed together," he murmured. In that dream, Ben had been alive, smiling, but waking always brought the same hard truth. Ben was gone. At night, New York glowed and grew quieter. Peter moved through its canyons of light in his Spider-Man suit, launching lines and swinging between buildings. He was no longer the reckless kid who joked mid-fight. He was a hero carved by grief, tempered by purpose. A cry of distress cut through the night. "Spider-Man, help!" A woman in an alley was being threatened by a knife-wielding attacker. Peter didn't hesitate. He shot webs and vaulted, webbing the assailant's arm to snatch the blade away and landing a solid punch that knocked him out cold. The woman sobbed with relief and thanked him. Peter offered a small smile. "Be careful on your way home." He handed the criminal to the police and, back on a rooftop, let the wind play at his mask. He turned Ben's lesson over and over in his mind until the grief shifted into resolve. "With great power comes great responsibility," he said quietly, the line now a vow. From then on, Spider-Man became steadier, more thoughtful. Peter learned not to underestimate an opponent or rush headlong into danger. He began to think tactically, to use his gifts where they would do the most good and cause the least harm. He was careful because he could see how much damage his abilities could do and how much they could save. Loss didn't vanish, but it became a driving force. Uncle Ben's spirit lived inside him and guided him. Peter kept going, becoming the guardian New York needed, someone who would bear responsibility and prevent other tragedies whenever he could. Crack! A dizzying vertigo slammed into Peter's head as if the whole world were spinning. For a moment, he felt himself swept along by a strange force, like a traveler slipping through time and space. Then he fell fully awake. Dr. Strange was standing over him, shaking him out of a sleepwalking fog. "I was true to expectations. The rescue was a complete success." Peter blinked, still dazed, the dream clinging to him like a second skin. "Huh? What's going on? What happened?" He touched his cheek as if to prove he was really awake. The memories of the nightmare were so vivid that he couldn't tell if it had been real. And why had he fallen asleep at all? It felt impossible. "I'm talking to you. Did you hear me?" Strange's expression tightened. He had an arrogant air about him. When Peter didn't respond quickly enough, he frowned. Oh, sorry. You mean Uncle Ben was saved?" Peter came fully to his senses. Strange's chest swelled with pride. "Of course, and don't you know who I am? I'm Stephen Strange. With me handling it, this was nothing." Strange, the brilliant surgeon, ordinarily wouldn't take part in emergency rescues. The Yggdrasil Foundation had offered him an irresistible fee. Even he admitted, though, that this was a miracle. I won't lie, this injury should have been beyond saving. I never expected him to pull through. Peter understood more than Strange guessed. He and Gao Li had been working on nanobot treatments. If Ben Parker had survived, it was because those nanobots had done their job. He didn't need to tell Strange. All he felt was an overwhelming gratitude, first to Strange for his skill, and more deeply to Gao Li. Whether the nightmare had been real or a warning, Peter resolved that what he'd seen would never happen. Up above the river of time, Gao Li, now transformed into Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto, looked down. The timeline was stable. Good, he murmured. The reality stone's power took effect and fooled the world. Gao Li was satisfied. In the days that followed, he noticed Peter becoming more grounded and diligent, visibly more mature and steady. Peter also began to understand the depth of his debt to Gao Li. He buried his thanks in action rather than words. That, in turn, made Gao Li's research life easier, leaving him occasional space to think about other things, like Stephen Strange's future. If Gao Li remembered correctly, Strange was supposed to become the next Sorcerer Supreme and take the Ancient One's place. Yet TPC intelligence described Strange only as a pure, brilliant surgeon, nothing to do with magic. Gao Li suspected some later event would change that trajectory. But now that Gao Li was Earth's guardian, did there still need to be a Sorcerer Supreme? From the Guardian's perspective, as long as someone could stand against dimensional threats, titles didn't matter. Still, it wasn't a question he could dismiss lightly. Camartage needed a leader. With the Ancient One gone, the temple was in turmoil, and they had an enemy who exploited that chaos. Caecilius, once a disciple of the Ancient One, had turned to Dormammu. The Ancient One hadn't appeared for a long time. "This is the opportunity I've been waiting for, my lord Dormammu." "Then act as you will." Dark whispers faded. Caecilius opened his eyes. Golden light flickered in them. Night had swallowed the solitary Camartage Tower. Most masters had sunk into deep meditation. The holy place was quiet, save for the faint glow of oil lamps along the walls. Then a terrible presence tore the silence apart. Caecilius and his followers burst in. Their eyes were blades, cold, hungry malice, and they had one aim, the library. Caecilius wore a polite smile that only made his cruelty clearer. He looked at the familiar halls as if reclaiming property. "Heh, I'm back!" His footsteps were a grim drumbeat. A young master spotted them and shouted, "Enemy attack! Be on guard!" The temple snapped to life. Masters gathered for defense. Caecilius merely watched, amused. The masters were powerful, but inexperienced in real battle. Their movements were precise but awkward. "You're not ready for this," he whispered. At his signal, his followers struck. A furious battle broke out. Masters chanting spells, flinging brilliant ribbons of magic that turned the courtyard near daytime. Caecilius's men could match little of that coordinated power and were driven back. Then Caecilius moved. He flashed to a master and seized his throat. "Ah!" The man's eyes bulged. His hand clawed at Caecilius's arm as the air left him. Caecilius's grip was unrelenting. "Without the Ancient One, do you think your magic can stop me?" he asked coldly. "Let's see if you can save your companions." The master went blue and purple, then collapsed. The others howled with rage. "Bastard! Caecilius! We can't just stand here," someone cried. "We must drive them off." But it was too late. Under Caecilius's leadership, the attackers pressed the advantage. Master after master was forced to retreat. They had never faced such a desperate, brutal assault. Doubt seeped in where certainty had been. Caecilius unleashed the Dark Dimension's power, raging fire and cold, killing intent, hurling energy like a falling meteor through Camartage. The masters spat blood as spells that had once seemed unstoppable were shredded by an otherworldly storm. Their counterattacks cut through the air, but did nothing to halt the devastation. One by one, they were crushed, falling to the ground with broken bodies and broken resolve. When Caecilius finally released the last man he had strangled, the courtyard was a ruin of corpses and ragged survivors. He walked through them deliberately, straight into the library. Rows of shelves were bathed in light, and the air smelled of paper and ink. Ancient tomes lay within reach. This was what he'd come for. Caecilius let himself smile, an expression of pleasure that made the onlookers sick. "Excellent. The summoning ritual is within reach. Next, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Before he left, he glanced at the remaining masters. Fear and despair had hollowed their faces. Caecilius knew they were no longer a threat. "This battle is over," he said softly. "You will never stop me." As Caecilius and his followers departed with stolen knowledge, the masters of Camartage sank into a black despair. Their sacred site had been desecrated, their lore stolen, their fate twisted into an irreversible calamity. They were mired in a bloody storm, falling into darkness. Chapter 216, Dormammu's Fury. Caecilius, after weighing his options, decided not to finish off Camartage. It wasn't a change of heart, it was cold calculation. Wiping out the temple would be manpower and energy intensive, and he still had 3 sanctums to take. The performance-to-cost ratio simply wasn't worth it. The surviving sorcerers drew the obvious conclusion. Led by Gao Li, an Asian sorcerer who had once been the librarian, and Mordo, an African-American sorcerer, they agreed on the stakes. "Caecilius's magic comes from the dark dimension," Gao Li said. "He's a follower of Dormammu. If Dormammu gets a foothold, he will need the 3 sanctums gone to break Agamotto's barrier and open the way to Earth." The 3 sanctums were ritual nodes established by the first Sorcerer Supreme, Agamotto, the creator of the Eye of Agamotto. Together, they could enclose and protect the planet. Destroy the nodes, and you might as well open the gate for a dimension god. Dormammu, they knew, was no mere threat. The ruler of the dark dimension, a devourer of worlds who bathed in infinite energy and sought to drag entire realms into darkness. "We can't let him succeed," Mordo growled, clenching his fists. "We have sorcerers stationed at all 3 sanctums. Which will he hit first? London, New York, or Hong Kong?" "The importance of the 3 sanctums is equal," Gali replied, frowning. "If we split our forces to guard them all, we'll be weaker everywhere." Before they could decide, the alarms went off. The office fell silent as the news came through. The London Sanctum. The ancient architecture of the London Sanctum shimmered under its concealing magic. Then an invisible force slammed the door open. Caecilius and his followers flowed into the hall like a cold wind. His voice, low and flat, filled the chamber. "Welcome, death, sorcerers of London." Purple flame flickered in Caecilius's eyes, the visible mark of dark dimension power. With emotion, he ripped the sanctum into the mirror world, dragging everything and everyone into the killing field he had prepared. His subordinates cut through the defenders, slaughtering sorcerers until the hall ran red. But the remaining London sorcerers were not inexperienced. Warned by the earlier attack on Camartage, they rallied quickly. The 3 leading arch-sorcerers, El, Lena, and Smith, assembled, magic artifacts gleaming. "Caecilius, you traitor!" El shouted, unleashing a beam of light. Caecilius merely waved, and a black shield swallowed El's strike. "I have embraced the darkness," he said, sneering. "Darkness is eternal." Lena and Smith joined in without hesitation. Smith's lightning cut through the blackness. Lena summoned water to form icy bulwarks. Under the combined assault, Caecilius's forces began to falter. Caecilius, however, hung back, watching with the cruel patience of a predator waiting for panic. When the defenders began to gain the edge, Caecilius struck. He leapt into the air, hands raised, and poured out a surge of destructive dark energy that saturated the sanctum. It was like a living thing, gnawing away at defenses. "This is the power of my lord Dormammu," Caecilius proclaimed. "You cannot resist it. I will sacrifice your lives to bring forth a new dark age." The 3 arch-sorcerers fought with everything they had. El tried to dispel the darkness. Lena held up a massive wall of water. Smith launched titanic lightning. Magic and shadow collided, each impact shaking the fabric of the room. Then, with a cataclysmic blast, the sanctum's defenses failed. Reinforcements from Camartage had just opened a teleportation portal when the explosion slammed into them, throwing them aside. By the time they could stand, it was too late. The London sanctum was shattered, its node rendered useless. With the barrier broken, Caecilius moved fast. The New York sanctum, tucked away on Bleecker Street, barely registered the disturbance beyond its own wards. Its concealing magics and contained battles kept the chaos local, avoiding attention from local heroes. Caecilius deliberately restrained himself there, swift, surgical strikes intended to minimize complications, and he overran it with frightening efficiency. Only the Hong Kong sanctum remained. Back at Camartage, under bright sunlight, Gowli hunched over a complex instrument, surrounded by charts and data. He was weary but focused when Iz pushed the lab door open, tablet in hand. "Mr. Gowley, you need to see this," she said, voice tight. On the screen, a live helicopter feed showed Hong Kong being swallowed by a shimmering alien space. Buildings and streets flickered, cracked, and were consumed by an otherworldly light. A reporter's terrified voice crackled through. "We don't know what's happening. Who can save us?" "The situation's getting worse," Iz said. "The police are evacuating, but the city's being enveloped. It looks like another world swallowing this one." Gowley's face tightened. He'd seen the dimension gods in the timelines. This matched those patterns. He couldn't wait. He gripped the zone memory, transformed, and fired himself through a dimensional portal to Hong Kong. As Kamen Rider Zone, Gowley's spatial senses sharpened. The city was distorted, streets folding into nothing and then back again. Panic filled the air, sirens carving through the haze. But to Gowley it was clear, this was a dimension incursion, and its source was the Hong Kong sanctum. He switched to the time memory and activated a maximum drive, reversing time across the area to reveal the origin of the catastrophe. Moments rewound and then froze at the instant of the trigger. An explosion at a church-like building, the Hong Kong sanctum. Caecilius and his disciples poured out of the ruins, their bodies ringing with magic as they raised their arms to the sky. "Descend, my lord Dormammu!" The summoning activated. With the sanctum's node destroyed, Earth's portal opened, and the dark dimension began to bleed through above Hong Kong. Gowley watched, then swapped the time memory for the zone memory and slotted it in. "Zone, maximum drive," he called. A brilliant azure light swept the streets. Before Caecilius and his men could react, Gowley used near-instant spatial traversal to seize them. With a motion of space, he ripped Caecilius and his followers out of Hong Kong and flung them straight into the yawning dark dimension above the city, the home plane of Dormammu himself. For a moment, Caecilius and his sorcerers were disoriented, then elated. This was the dark dimension, home turf for their master. Caecilius narrowed his eyes as Gowley stepped into view. "Who are you?" Caecilius demanded, the question sharper than confusion. "Why did you teleport us into the dark dimension?" Caecilius couldn't tell if Gowley was friend or foe. The answer and the danger waited in the dim, endless ether where Dormammu reigned.